I can do the introduction if you like.
You can do the who?
The introduction to the process.
All right. Good evening for everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for December the 11th, 2017. I have
Can I get you to pause for 1 second? Oh, there you go. Sorry.
colleagues here to my Planning Commission colleagues. And we have our staff, Laura Turway here. And today our two main items of business are number one, to interview some candidates for the Planning Commission vacancy. And then the Planning Commission will also be having an informal discussion about their goals for 2018 and any other relevant business that might come before us that our commissioners have for their, to present to each other. So Laura, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair McGriff. So before each of you, we have a vote sheet. On that vote sheet, we'll ask that you rank the candidates. So we'll go through and do the candidates one by one. We'll ask that the candidates wait in the lobby if they would like. During the other interviews, we'll bring them in one by one, and then you can decide at the will of the commission if you guys want to talk about each of the candidates at the end, and if I should bring in the candidates for that discussion. The appointment to committees is done by our mayor, and so he's joining us here at the end of the dais. And we'll ask that you rank all of the applicants, and then when you're done, pass me those vote sheets, and then I will scan them and then send them to the mayor for consideration as well. Each of the positions are a 4-year duration. And we do have one candidate who is currently on the Planning Commission, and so should you appoint that candidate, which is Commissioner Mahoney, his term will expire on March 21st of 2020, so you'll get a partial term. Everybody else would have the full 4-year term. As you know, Planning Commission positions expire after 8 continuous years.
Why March 21st?
He replaced somebody who left Planning Commission, and so he came in on a partial term. So he started just a few months in.
Okay.
And we have how many vacancies?
We have 1 vacancy. We had 9 original applicants, and tonight we'll be interviewing 5 people. There is a 6th person, and she said if we didn't make a decision tonight or something, that she would be willing to interview another time if you'd like.
Okay, so we have 1 vacancy and 5 applicants?
Correct.
Including Commissioner Mahoney's position?
Correct.
Or that's the 1 position?
Yep, for this 1 position.
Okay.
And if you would like, I can go through and call them in the order that they're listed on the sheet. There's also page numbers associated with each person. That's a page number to find their information in their packets. Are there any questions before we begin?
You know, I just think just because Bob should be last. What do you think about that, Bob?
Whatever.
Okay.
Before we get into it, just going through the questions, we have 6 people, 5 questions. What do you...
We're just going to go down the line of that like we did last time, unless you have a particular question you are really keen on, then we'll put your name onto that one.
No, I was going to say, would it make sense to add a question?
Yes, I actually have one as well.
Oh, okay.
One that we did from last time.
Sure.
All right, so I will politely kick out all of our applicants, and then I'll grab the first one.
What if you refuse?
Please don't grab anyone in light of what's been going on in the news today.
There
so
you
you're not
go.
grabbing anyone.
So I'll bring in the first candidate, and then we can go through it. Also, in the interest of the public and transparency, everything is going to be taped. So we aren't stopping the tape. Last year we stopped the tape, moved to an audio recording, and then went back to the live feed. And this year everything is open and transparent.
Well, we were open and transparent last time.
Right. It's just more accessible when it's on demand on the website and live streaming.
Next year, can we have web voting?
Nope.
I'm just kidding.
When we get staff, maybe.
No, we're not having web voting.
All right.
I got it.
All right. So can I have everyone wait in the lobby except for Mr. Howard Post? And would you like to come up to the testifying desk?
Their involvement in Okay, we had that one last time, but I.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah. You have another one you want to add?
No, I was gonna say, usually, introduction is nice,
Well, we'll do that.
but I don't,
Okay, so we're gonna do that with every single one of them.
Yeah.
yeah.
So, good evening, Howard. Do you know everyone here or know of everyone? Because we can go through and introduce ourselves, which,
I know Tom and you.
why don't we
and
just do that?
Mr. Epstein
That's the mayor.
and the mayor.
Yeah, so it's Dan Holliday.
And
Vern,
Vern
introduce yourself.
Johnson, on the commission for less than a year, so I've gone through this process like you're going through very recently.
Oh, you already know me.
Just do it for the
Tom Guile.
record.
Been through this twice.
Denise McGriff.
Paul Espy, welcome, Howard.
Oh, second,
And Vern, remember to sit up closer because you're the one that they can't always hear. So we want to make sure that
And-
every word you say is on there.
Mr. Post, can I get you to say your name and city of residence for the record?
I'm Howard Post. I live 302 Blanchard, Oregon City.
So Howard, why don't you just give, last year we had just everybody give like a very brief introduction, like 2 to 3 of yourself.
I've lived in Oregon City for 24 years. I served chair of the Canadian Neighborhood Association for 18 years. I served for chair of the HRB for 6 years. I'm just interested in Oregon City. It's growing in leaps and bounds, and just trying to interested to see where it's going and try to keep it under control. But it is growing so fast that that's ridiculous, you know. And just, I'm interested. Been here a long time, know a little bit. Need to know more, but like to get involved. That's basically where I'm at.
Zach, do you want
Me
to
to
start?
go? Sure. So we're gonna go through some scripted questions, and you'll get all of them, but I'll start off with, why is the Planning Commission important to Oregon City?
Well, it needs to help the growth and kind of channel it and keep it growing. It's growing in so fast and so mass, you know, in 24 years, it's grown. You know, we used to be 10,000, now we're probably 30, and it's just growing bounds and bounds and bounds. And like to see it kind of developed in an orderly manner, so.
Okay, so in your introduction, you've probably touched on this a little bit. What relevant experiences, skills, interests have prepared you for the Planning Commission?
Well, like I said, I've been in the CNA for years and years and years, and I was on the HRB for years and years and years. And that kind of gives you a brief look at the city. I mean, everything is so different and everything is so vast. I know about enough to be dangerous, but I'd like to know a little bit more.
Of all the people, that was me.
Okay.
Do you want to make an announcement for people to turn your phones off?
I think we all know that. Just take a second here while we're going to go to the next question
I apologize.
and make sure that we are all on the off. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Howard, what's the most important goal or purpose of the Planning Commission?
Probably to direct the growth of the city and try to funnel it where it needs to go and how it needs to grow.
That's it. That's you next, Jim.
Okay. How would you balance code requirements with public comments?
Well, you know, there has to be guidelines, and that's the codes, and pretty much the codes need to be followed. And I think sometimes the codes aren't explained very well, and that's a lot of the problem with most of us. We don't quite understand the codes, and we just need to understand them more. And Laura's doing a good job, but the mass doesn't get involved, so they don't really know. And that's the point, is to try to explain the codes more to people so they know, and we can come in and say, hey, what do I need to do here, versus coming back later and getting fined or being out of compliance.
I'm going to do a follow-up. That's actually sounds more of a responsibility of staff. We don't really do that.
Well, you know, it's like I have a question, I go talk to Laura and she answers it for me. I mean, that, if that's staff or whatever, but it's easier to ask the question before you do something versus coming back later and having a problem with it.
Okay, well, I think the context of the question has to do with, in the course of our conducting the public's business and how we deal with, as it says, balancing code with public comments.
Well, if you understand the code more, then I think it makes it easier for the public to deal with it. Most of the people in Kenema, I'm just talking, don't understand the code. I mean, you know, if we understood the code and say, this is what I need to do, this, and this, and you do it, then you don't have the problem, versus I just run out and do it, and then I come back and then I have a problem later.
Could you give an example from the time you were on the Historic Review Board?
Well, it's people come in and buy a lot and they just want to go build something that they don't understand that there are codes. This is what you can do and this is what you can't do. If they understood the codes better to start with, then they would be more aware of what they could do and what they couldn't do. That's in Kenema now.
Could be anywhere.
Oh, well, anywhere, yeah.
Me. So I know from your involvement in the Historic Review Board that you probably didn't have as many meetings as we do. You know, we meet twice a month, generally. We also have a substantial number of materials to read, not only staff reports, applicants' materials, looking at comprehensive plan criteria, looking at the, you know, the quasi-judicial land use process. So how do you feel about all that? I mean, are you going to be able to do the work? Basically, it says, are you available to read materials and attend hearings? So it's more than, it's that and more.
I have the time, and I'd like to have more knowledge of what goes on. I know a little bit about what's happening, but I'd like to know more and become better educated. I have the time. I'm retired and have a lot of time.
So what do you know about the quasi-judicial land use planning process?
About land use?
The quasi-judicial land use planning process.
Well, not that much, to be
Well, you
honest.
were chair of the HRB.
Pardon me?
Said you were chair of the HRB.
Yes, I was the chair of the HRB. The Planning Commission, we know you have to start and follow it through the process.
You want to tell us more?
No,
Oh, okay.
Well-
All right. I'm just giving you the opportunity to say as much as you
well,
want
it's
to say.
just, you know, you start the process, it goes from A to B to C to D to E, and you have to follow it through the whole process, and it's very involved. And you always have curves and stuff that you didn't plan on to start with, and you go back and redo it and try to redo it again and hope to get it right.
Any follow-up questions?
Chairman Griff, I have a question that I'm going to ask all the candidates, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Yes? You mind or don't
Yes.
you? Okay. So if a proposal comes before the Planning Commission that you have a personal problem with, could you put your personal bias aside and decide only on the code and the law?
Yes.
Okay.
Gentlemen, do you have any follow-up questions?
None for me.
Would you like to sum it up and
Well,
conclude?
like I said, I've been here a long time, and I'm interested in the development of the city, and I've got a pretty good grasp, but there's areas I don't know about that I want to learn about. And that's why I think this would be interesting. I have the time to do it, and I think it would be kind of fun, and to see where it goes.
Now, don't bias. All of it. Tom just asked me what part is fun, and I said all of it's fun.
Well, I know it takes a lot of time, and it's a volunteer position and everybody put the time in and, you know, a lot of people don't want to do it because it is very involved and it takes a lot of time.
And we all have a pretty weird view of fun around here, so you probably might need to have that same kind of view.
Well, yeah.
That was very well said. Well, if you have nothing else you want to tell us or conclude, thank you so much for
You bet.
applying, and we'll look forward to talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Howard.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Do you intend to explain quasi judicial?
Yes, since I asked one, we have to ask
Okay,
them all.
just wanted to make sure.
Well, since he was chair of the Historic Review Board,
Yes, I
that's also a
understand
quasi judicial group.
The fun is watching the city attorney go like, when I ask a question.
We are the only two
Yeah,
bodies that have that,
right,
as advisories, that have that authority.
Laura.
Can I summarize the 3 questions I heard that are new? One is for a brief introduction of themselves. And then 2 is, what do you know about the quasi-judicial land use process? And number 3 is, if a proposal comes before the planning commission that you have a personal interest in, can you put your interests aside and make a decision based on the law?
There's
Does that
actually
sound right?
another one, but he already answered it. The one I asked last year, which is what neighborhood association were they in and what was their involvement? But he already answered it, so I didn't ask that question, but I will ask the other people. He started off the bat by saying he was in Kenema, da-da-da-da-da, he'd been involved in blah, 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 so I didn't have to really ask the question. So before we have discussed, I just had one little thing I wanted to ask you. Was it just the copies I got, or was there just not a lot of information in the applications?
You guys got everything minus the identifying information like phone number, email.
Well,
that kind
yes,
of
but I meant,
stuff.
so you have a question, and I'm only asking this because I remember when I filled this out, I ended up having to use a smaller font to put in, to answer the questions.
There were no supplemental questions that went with it.
No, there weren't any supplemental questions, but I was just looking at the applications and thinking, okay, did I miss something in here on one of the questions, or? So, okay, what we got is what we got. I just
So-
thought there was more.
And then just a clarifying process question. 1, do you guys want to talk about the candidates as a group, even though you're making your individual recommendations? And 2, if so, do you want to do it at the very end or after each interview?
Let's do it at the very end.
At the
At
end.
the end? Okay. All right, so I will go grab Mr. Larrabee.
Don't grab anybody.
Oh, yes.
We will defend you to the death.
Pardon?
Who's she getting next?
Mr., what is it, Laramie?
Larrabee.
Larrabee, I closed one up. So no one can cheat off my sheet.
Nobody's cheating off of yours.
Michael Larrabee, is it Michael Larrabee?
Larrabee, I think. So we'll just briefly introduce ourselves, because he doesn't know us.
Absolutely.
Hi, Michael. We're gonna just briefly, even though you have these name tags, it's just easier if we so anyway, we'll start at this end this time.
Hi, Zachary Henkin.
Paul Espy.
I'm Denise McGriff.
Tom Guile.
Vern Johnson?
Mayor Dan Holliday.
And I'm Michael Larrabee. I live in Oregon City.
So would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, like 2 to 3 minutes?
2 to 3 minutes.
Yep.
I don't know if I have enough interesting things to say the last 2 to 3 minutes, but I am a compliance manager, quality manager in Gresham. And so in that capacity, I'm familiar with taking problems or finding problems and creating solutions that take into account a wide variety of interests and also regulations that are from industries or customers. And what piqued my interest in this position was coming to a neighborhood association meeting and hearing what the Planning Commission had to say. It was very stirring to me because it seemed like there are people who are trying to make positive changes in our community, and that's what made me want to be a part of it. I guess for other items that are about myself in particular, I am from New England, Maine specifically, and I lived in Boston for 7 years. We moved here to be able to afford to start a small business. My wife and I is we. And in 2015, we opened up a food cart. So we are proprietors of that business. And then I have my day job at the factory that's in Gresham.
Is that in Portland?
The food cart is in Portland.
Wow. That's keeping you busy.
We are busy, yeah. My wife runs the food cart.
Yeah.
And I'm mainly a support role
Yeah.
and a proprietor.
Trouble. Yeah, well, it probably takes a little bit of troubleshooting, I would imagine.
It does. But again, where my specialty is design solutions and things like that. For example, if we have a salad that we're making and it has 8 different components, when I was working with her on a weekend, I noticed her doing these movements of taking out each of these buckets to compose the salad, where instead we took a container that was the size of that sandwich station, put all of the components in it so that she could take it out one motion rather than several reaching motions that could cause her strain over time.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Excellent.
there is a little bit of problem solving, even something so small.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see, who do we start with first last time?
I'll start.
Okay.
Why do you think the Planning Commission is important to Oregon City?
I'm happy to hear that question because in where I work, it's a family-owned business that has grown into a medium-sized manufacturing facility. And planning for the future means that you have goals and that you are going to have strategy and tactics to achieve those goals. And what I would see from the Planning Commission is that we are taking the necessary steps not only to meet our goals, but to make sure that they don't conflict with any other goals. For example, we have some city commission goals. We want to make sure that what we're planning doesn't run contrary to something that other groups within the town's entire structure is trying to achieve. And basically, that's something that I'm familiar with doing from system dynamics thinking, just making sure that whatever you're moving forward with is the best for the entire system, that which would be the health of Oregon City as a city.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, what relevant experiences, and this sort of relates to what you were talking about, what relevant experiences, skills, and interests have prepared you for the Planning Commission?
Again, the experience that I have is not in planning. It is in quality management and system dynamics thinking, which are different ways of saying what you are going to do and then doing what you said you would do, while applying all of the laws and making sure that you don't disrupt the other things that other people have in motion within the city. So that's the experience that I have. It's to do with compliance, making sure that, customer, regulatory, OSHA, all of these different standards and interests from our customers and all throughout are met without causing the company to be unprofitable. Mm-hmm. And where I would want to apply those design method thinking tools in pursuit of planning for positive outcomes for Oregon City.
Excellent. Okay. Thanks.
Number 3, I presume that you've watched or on TV or been at a planning commission meeting. What is the most important goal or purpose of the planning commission?
So when I've gone through and looked at what the Planning Commission has achieved, I know that there are several different projects that are ongoing, especially the legacy project for the falls. And in addition, there are land use issues throughout the city that have a variety of interests that are desire one outcome or another. I'm not partial to any of these particular items, and sort of what I specialize in are situations where the outcomes are never, the outcome that's decided upon is never going to satisfy wholly one group or another. And that is something that I'm familiar with. So what I have seen from the City Planning Commission's work is that you're in those type of situations pretty frequently. And that's something that I do have experience with.
Okay, it's a balance question. How do you balance the code requirements that there, the outline of all of the criteria you should meet versus public comment, citizens from neighborhoods or wherever that come in? And is that a question that?
Yeah, so this goes back to, again, what my specialty is taking a system and then breaking it down to the individual elements. So you define what is success is the first thing that we would define. And then what are the metrics that we are going to measure in order to determine whether we've become successful? And that it's a lot of words and it's a lot of blah, 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 but these are things that can be done simply and understandably and then visualized so that our citizens can see whether or not the outcomes that they've wanted are met. And what that can entail is a situation where maybe we're only partially meeting some of those needs, but again, for the system of Oregon City, we're doing the best from each of the directions. We need to take into account all the other efforts that are being made within this city to keep us safe, happy, and organized. And so I do have experience in doing this, and I have had a measurable success rate at achieving outcomes. So I'm not, in this situation, I wouldn't be running like I do in my quality department. I'd be a member of the board. And even in the department that I run, I bounce everything off an associative. And I think that making sure that what I could bring to the commission is a data-based and DMAIC method, quality thinking approach to planning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we mentioned to the previous applicant that we have meetings twice a month. Generally, I will have to say if our workload is either equal to or exceeds what the city commission has. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of reading. That's a lot of code requirements. We're a quasi-judicial land use body, so you're in a decision-making role. And I guess part of the question is are you going to be able to do all that, and do you understand what that is, what a quasi-judicial land use body is?
I understand what it is from what I've read on the website and from the term quasi-judicial body. Again, where I do not know the code, but I am very familiar from previous positions that I have been in and the current position that I am professionally, that the main function of my job is to interpret specifications, which are, in a way, the law of what we're trying to achieve. And that is my main function. So I do not have experience specifically in this, but in the realm of interpreting specifications, making sure that we're in compliance, where in this capacity, the specification is the law. I do understand that, and I'm well versed in being able to comprehend specifications or law, which I've done for OSHA, and to be able to demonstrate compliance effectively in that capacity.
So we get a fairly fat packet, and are you going to have time to plow through all the material and show up to the meetings? And
Oh boy, I'll tell you, I'm a reader.
I'm just following up on
Yeah,
Denise's.
yeah. And then we had,
Okay.
you mentioned at the beginning that you had gone to a neighborhood association. What neighborhood association are you in, and are you active in it? Do you go to meetings?
Yes, Kanema.
Okay,
And yes, I do go to meetings.
okay.
I don't go to every single one, but I
Wouldn't expect you to, but
and yes, to be fully answering all your questions, yes, I will be able to read and comprehend. And if I do not understand things, I am one who will state that I do not understand something and need for it to be clarified. I make time for reading, regardless of whether it's for a position like this that I would take very seriously, or just for my personal. And I would absolutely attend the meetings as needed.
Okay.
have you been involved in any other appointed boards or in where you used to live or here or?
This is the first time I have ever decided that I wanted to get involved more. And I saw a notice that came because I had signed up for the newsletter for the Kanema neighborhood. And I have felt strongly that I care about what happens in the community, so I wanted to get involved.
Do you want to wrap up and say, what else would you like to? Oh, sorry. You have one more question, and then you can wrap up.
So and I'm asking this question of everyone, if a proposal comes before the planning commission that you have a personal problem with, could you put your personal bias aside and decide only on the code and the law?
This is something that I do on a continual basis at a professional level. I will state explicitly that yes, I am able and feel strongly that that should be the way that decisions are made. From a data-driven decision-making professional life, I believe that that's what we should do. I might think that we shouldn't allow XYZ because it spoils my view. However, again, if it's the best for the system of Oregon City, that's what we need to be striving towards on a continual basis. And if we make those decisions based on the data and based on what's good for the system of Oregon City, it's going to make this city better for everyone in the long term. And yes, I feel strongly that that is the way the decisions should be made.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us or like us to know or?
No, I think I feel that maybe I've relied overly heavy on my professional experience, but that's really what made me think that I have something to add, is to bring system-based thinking as a member of a larger board to be a voice for that approach. And that's why I decided out of the options that were available that I would apply for this particular commission.
So was there any trigger for you to fill out an application? Is there anything what made you decide to do it?
Yes, I believe that anyone who signed up for the email blast for information about neighborhood association meetings, I was on a list because the same person who gave me the Kanema information sent an email that had this information that said, here are the items that are positions that are available to be applied for. Mm-hmm. And I went down that list and tried to think if there was anything that my voice would be a contribution to. And this is what I decided on.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
taking your
Yeah.
time to come in.
All
Appreciate
right.
it. Was very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you all too.
Vern, do you need any water, Tom?
Nope.
Anything?
No, Dan's got juice over
I
there.
don't, I only have that
We
at
have it
home.
on
I
ice.
can't bring that.
There's stuff in the fridge out there if you guys want some.
I know. It's,
Yeah.
we're getting a little thirsty. And you brought your own drink, so.
Yeah.
I actually have my water bottle in the car, but I drank it all.
Did you drink coffee? See, sometimes all I have to do is smell the coffee. I'm feeling okay. Yeah.
Apparently the chair's disappeared again.
Okay.
Mostly I wanted more
We're going to start with introductions of ourselves, and then we'd like you to say a little bit about yourself. So
Bollinger.
Bollinger, I'm
start with
sorry.
you.
That's okay.
Hi, Zachary Henkin.
Paul Espy?
Denise McGriff.
Tom Guile.
Vern Johnson?
Mayor Dan Holliday.
Actually, his first name really isn't Mayor, it's just Dan.
No, officially it is.
Your
My
first name is officially changed it to Mayor?
While I'm mayor, it is.
Anyway, would you like to give just a brief
I think
overview,
even after you're mayor, you are still.
introduction of yourself?
Yeah, I'm not sure how much you want to know, but Troy Bollinger, I've lived in Oregon City, I guess for about 6 years now in the McLaughlin district. And I've got 2 kids that my daughter's 21, so I haven't raised her the whole time here, but the last little bit, and then my son, raising him here as well.
Anything else?
Anything else you'd like to know?
No, I'm
No, that's-
giving you the opportunity to tell us what you want to tell us, and then
Well,
we'll
that's
get
pretty much.
we'll get
that's
into the questions.
Pretty much me.
All right. So Vern, you want to start?
Okay, sure. Why is the Planning Commission important to Oregon City?
I think it takes in 2 parts. Number one, and not necessarily in any order, because the order I think is a little bit subjective, but to maintain the history that we have here. And then the second part of that is to mix that with the growth that we need to continue. So that's that mix of the old and the new and making it work together.
Okay.
I'm still writing.
It's okay, take your time. I want to make sure you have plenty of time
Okay.
to.
What relevant experiences, skills, and interests have prepared you for the Planning Commission?
I guess experience, well, I'm in marketing. So I'm not an engineer. I've never been in city government, never been in planning. So I don't have anything specific to that. But I served 4 years on the school board. And during the school board, we worked with the Planning Commission on the transportation facility. And yep, Oregon City School District, yes. So we had the transportation maintenance facility out there by the high school, and we worked with that. And my term just ended in June, so I was there kind of beginning, middle, and end of that process. And then, of course, as we are looking into a bond with the school district, which I'm on the bond committee, but no longer on the school board. And, that, of course, we're not in the planning stages per se of that, but it's certainly looking at purchasing land and where's that's going to be and where's the growth with the new developments and different things going to happen. And so I have a lot of experience in that, looking at dollars and cents, what's it going to cost. Of course, there's fees, and then there's, if we do it this way, what's it going to cost? If we go that way, what's it going to cost? Different options like that. My interest is I love history. I'm not a history buff. I don't know a lot I'm not a historian, but I like history. Grew up in the Hawthorne district in southeast Portland, and the home was built in 1925, and the home I live in now is 1879. So I like old. But I also understand that we can't keep old homes and old buildings and just expect they're going to continue to be fine. We have to do planning. Streets were narrower when they were built originally, and now that's not good enough. And we've got parks that maybe are in different places and can't just build a skyscraper wherever we want because it doesn't fit in the community. And so my interest is maintaining Oregon City for its culture and for its history, at the same time accommodating that growth and doing it in a way that it's going to attract people to come join us.
Part of my question says how they've prepared you for the Planning Commission. Have you ever attended Planning Commission or watched it on TV?
We watched on TV a little bit, but I think we all know that's not usually the most exciting time is to watch. I mean, I was on the school board. People don't sit there and watch the school board meetings on TV either very often.
We're so disappointed.
I know how that works, but yeah, I have watched a few.
Okay.
That's you, Paul.
Okay. What's the most important goal or purpose of the Planning Commission, do you think?
Yeah, that's a tough one when you say the most, because I think I guess it depends who you ask, but you're asking me. So I would say the most important aspect is integrating the growth and the future into what currently exists.
Good.
How would you balance code requirements with public comment?
I'd put a lot of weight on public comment.
So hang on, so we should really clarify that, because people are thinking that's, when I looked at that question involves the code requirements that involve our work, not just any general code requirement out there. That was your intent?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because I remember the first time I looked, and I thought, wait a minute, what code requirement? Our requirements of the code that we have, or the criteria that we deal with, so.
Right, that's what I assumed you meant.
Yeah.
I put a lot of weight on public comment, public input. You know, rules are in place for a reason, and they need to be, I think rules need to be honored. You ask my children, that rules definitely need to be followed and honored. At the same time, things do change, and the citizens today need to have a lot of say in what happens with the community they choose to live in. If they're not heard, then they will leave, which is not what we want. And at that point, then the rules are for naught, because the people aren't here to enjoy it. So I think we put a lot of interest in public comment. We want to hear what people want to say. And then at the end of the day, we have to balance all that. And I think it's the commission's job to hear everybody and make a decision based on what they heard, and in many cases, conflicting opinions from the public.
So unlike the school board, we probably meet a little bit more often. We meet a couple of times a month. We have what I would consider to be a very vigorous and comprehensive materials that we read, that we receive. We don't unfortunately get packets anymore, but it's online, and there's a lot of reading, there's site visits, there's all of that, and then there's the whole issue of us being one of the two advisory committees to the City Commission, that we are a quasi-judicial land use body. So do you feel that you have the time to put in, because it's not a lot of time for on-the-job training?
For your first assessment, I'm going to disagree a little bit. School board, we're used to meeting about 3 to 4 times a month, and each meeting's about 4 hours, and we've been there as late as 11:30 when I get home to my kids.
Used to late meetings.
Doesn't happen anymore. As of last week. Yes.
So I'm not sure your assessment is accurate. Do I have the time? Absolutely. I'm a parent, and that is my number one responsibility. That is the reason that I like to help out in the community, is because I want to have a say and an input and some direction on what my family gets to enjoy. At the same time, my family comes first. But I'm also very flexible with my career, and I'm a single parent. At the same time, my son has a mother who's involved on a part-time basis, and certainly he would be well taken care of when I have to be away. But that certainly is my number one job.
Great, thanks.
Well, you mentioned that obviously, I know you, so I know what neighborhood you live in, and so you live in the McLaughlin neighborhood, and obviously that's a very active neighborhood association. Have you been active in the neighborhood association?
Not as of late. I have from, I would say off and on over the 6 years I've been here. Depends what I have going on at the time. With school board, that was my number one responsibility, and with family, that was a big deal. And so when I could fit one in, I could, but I wasn't going to leave my son at home to do his homework so I could go listen to a meeting when I already spent the night before at a meeting.
Yeah, and then somebody has to come back and check it.
That's right. That's right.
Go ahead, you ask it.
Oh, something she had asked earlier. Do you understand what quasi-judicial means?
I'm not extremely familiar with that, no.
Oh, you'll learn.
I'm sure I will.
Dan?
If a proposal comes before the commission that you have a personal problem with, could you put your personal biases aside and decide only on the code and law?
Yes. I was growing up, my parents always accused me of being able to argue the other side. And that wasn't very good as a kid, because it was always the opposite side of my parents. But as I have grown, it's allowed me to see both sides of an argument and be able to remove myself quite a bit. If it came about that I was not able to do that, I'd recluse myself and make sure that I made my position known, so a decision could be made that's more equitable.
Well, I probably won't ask the other applicants this, because it's very particular to the school board. So we've had Wes come in from time to time, and Wes was unavailable at the last hearing that we had, and Larry was there, and so we've been talking off and on Larry and I, for probably about the last 3 years of trying to figure out how we could have a informal work session between the school board and the planning commission, since we both are dealing with some of the same issues. And just for your information, there's a state law involving special districts, which the school district would be one, that talks about it coordinating fully with the local government that it's involved in. So either, depending on whether the property is in Clackamas County or whether it's in Oregon City. And we still haven't quite gotten that together because we meet at the same time.
Maybe we need to make sure we meet at a different time.
Well, that's kind of what I suggested to Larry, so I'll try to work on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
Any other comments?
Anything you want to tell us to wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Your questions are very thorough. Appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate your taking the time to fill out the paperwork and take the time to come in for tonight, because there's always other things that we can be doing.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll show you back.
Great, thanks. Can you, go ahead, Troy.
And this is where all the fun happens, actually.
So I just have a quick question about Mr. Mahoney before we move on. So.
Slowly, because the door is closing. You can hear everything when the door is open. So
It's not that big a deal. In the code section that you provided on this, under 2.24.020 membership, it says the planning commission consists of 7 members to be appointed by the mayor, and paragraph 2 says any vacancy should be filled by the mayor for the unexpired portion of the term. So Mr. Mahoney's term, should he be reappointed, would expire on the 31st of December, not on March or whatever.
His term now expires the 31st because it finishes up the remainder of the term he was appointed to.
Right, but you said his term was going to expire in March or something, and
That's because of the sub C, where it says you can only serve 8 consecutive years. It would expire March 21st of 2020. So he has a couple of years still.
I see what you're saying.
yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I got that.
okay. All right,
Is that okay? All right.
next.
All right, I'll go get Mr. Hammond Williams.
So there will be a midterm forever and give it back in January.
I still don't know what's going on.
Hi, Tim.
Like going to the dentist.
Vern?
Vern Johnson?
Denise McGriff?
Paul Espy?
Zachary Henkin.
Mayor Dan Holiday.
Would you like to give us just a brief overview of yourself before we start into the questions?
The grueling question.
Or the grueling? Okay.
Grueling questions.
Right.
Yeah, Tim Hammond Williams. I've lived here longer than anywhere else in my life, 27 years now. I've been involved in neighborhood committees, the Metro Enhancement Committee when it was neighborhood-based. I've been involved with farmers markets, and both my kids went through Oregon City schools, and I think it's time for me to stop sitting at home and yelling at the TV and get involved.
What about all the neighborhood cleanups you helped?
Oh yeah, the neighborhood cleanups and discussions about river access trails and yeah, all that good stuff.
That was back when we used to get cool T-shirts. Paul, do you want to start with number 1?
Sure. So why do you think the Planning Commission is important to Oregon City?
Well, I think there would be chaos without it. I think it's important that there are in-depth discussions about what people bring to the city by way of, you know, we want to develop this, this, or this, and there has to be some mechanism for tempering that enthusiasm with rules and regulations, if you like. There has to be a way to maintain some semblance of order, if only because we don't want to end up like the San Fernando Valley.
Well, we have the urban growth boundary to thank for that,
Yes, we do.
And we're not on fire right now.
and we're not on fire.
Yeah, that too, as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's, what is it, 95 down there, something like that?
Yeah, 80-mile-an-hour winds.
Okay.
What relevant experience, skills, and interests have prepared you for the Planning Commission?
The fact that I've lived here as long as I have, the fact that my neighborhood has changed as much as it has during that time. I was a paint contractor for 20 years. I've kind of been involved on the fringes of city government with metro enhancement and neighborhood committees. I don't know if I'm prepared, but time would tell, I think.
So what do you think the most important goal or the purpose of the Planning Commission is? You sort of answered that, and I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little more.
It's kind of, I see it as an advice and consent role, a bit like, you know, the US Senate is advice and consent.
He's on.
didn't
Sorry,
turn him off.
Tim. We're on.
You know, people come with an idea, this is what we want to do, and I think the role of the Planning Commission is to say, well, that's fine, but these are the parameters within which you can do it or not. Hopefully that's an answer.
That's great.
I'm still writing.
He's writing.
I'm doing a thesis. Tim, how would you balance code requirements that are in our code books with the public comment as they come in? I think some people misunderstand when we ask that question. People come in, tell their side, we have code requirements. How do you balance those two?
I think the city code is probably a stricture on creativity in a way, but that also is probably a good thing because it provides certainty about what can and cannot be done. So if the proposal you bring before the Planning Commission fits within the stricture of city code, then any arguments against it are kind of, you have to justify them. You know, if I want to build a multifamily unit on my property and it's only zoned R6, then I have to make a case to you guys as to why I should be allowed to do that.
Okay.
I think that's what codes provide. Certainty, predictability.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate
Excellent.
that.
You're next, Vern.
How are you reading volumes of information? And the question really is, are you available to read the materials,
Yes.
prepare yourself for the meeting, and attend the meeting? And you may know that it's generally meet on the second and
Fourth
fourth
Monday.
Mondays of each month.
Yeah. Yes, I am. Reading the materials, not a problem, and attendance is not a problem. I'm local. I could probably walk here in 25 minutes.
One of the things that we get involved in is because we are a quasi-judicial body, we get a lot of legal stuff. And
I'm sure there's a learning curve, but the physical attention to the material, I don't think is an issue.
we have very able and capable staff who can
Yes,
answer
we
a
do.
lot of questions, as I know myself, since I call frequently.
She's still on a learning curve.
So you mentioned that you were involved in the Park Place neighborhood and some other committees. Any other relevant experience?
Volunteering with the farmers market gives you kind of an overview of of the city in a way, a different kind of overview, but, you know, you see people, you talk to people.
So you're getting sort of a major cross-section then?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And it is increasingly a kind of a hub. It's a meeting place, and you hear a lot of stuff.
That's good.
Most of it's good.
Yes, most of it's good.
Can't expect it all to be good.
No.
Good. Do you have anything else that you'd like to let us know? Oh, sorry, what's your question?
We forget about him down there.
If a proposal comes before the commission that you have a personal problem with, could you put your personal bias aside and decide only on the code and law?
I certainly hope so.
Okay.
Well, I will tell you this, you know, this is a fun group. And he's going, oh, God?
Albeit strange.
Yes, anyway. Got to follow up?
Okay, so did we talk about quasi-judicial stuff?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Okay. So
Lots of legalese.
there is a lot of that. I will say that we kind of have a very congenial group, which is good. And we have staff to help us. So anyway, well, we want to thank you for filling
Thank you.
out the application and coming in and taking your time to see us, and happy farming.
Yeah, it's quiet at this time of year. This is vacation time. Thank you.
Yes.
You gotta make some more noise down here so she knows that you're down here.
See, you're usually down there, and I've got you right here next
I
to
know.
me, so it's, you know, I forget.
Who's this next guy?
We just don't seem to get a lot of
Just Bob.
robust applications from women. Oh, I guess we don't have her.
No,
She
she dropped.
out?
Yeah, she
Okay.
dropped. It's a strange guy here.
We need to do more recruitment of get some more women on our boards and commissions. Well, we're going to do just a brief introduction, even though,
Can we pass on the introduction?
well, we have to treat everybody the same.
Everybody the same. I'm Vern
Familiarity breeds
Johnson.
contempt, as
We've
they
met.
say. So, this is Mr. Vern Johnson.
What is my name tonight? Tom Guile.
Kyle.
I read your
Keith
letter.
McGriff.
Paul Espy?
Zach Henkin.
So, Mr. Mahoney, thank you for coming in tonight and filling out the application. Would you like to give us a little bit of an overview about yourself before we enter into the strenuous and robust questions?
Well, at the risk of repeating myself, been on the planning commission for 6 years, something like that. Where did time go when you're having fun? Background in planning, 23 years. Master's in public administration. I guess that's about enough to rather than bore you guys to death. Live in Oregon City, married, haven't been accused of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
They haven't caught up with me yet.
Always
But I do apologize in advance, okay?
keep duck and cover, they say.
Okay.
Bob, why is the Planning Commission important to Oregon City?
Well, it actually determines the direction of growth for the entire community, both physically and policy-wise, which is recommended to the Commission for adoption, and is responsible for recognizing and enforcing state law that pertains to planning, and the adoption of the comprehensive general plan and zoning ordinance, and all the stuff that goes with that. And they work closely with the planning department. They are an advisory board to the commission, which I strongly believe in, not a power in and of themselves, but they advise, and they work in unison and in partnership with the staff and support the staff with their conclusions, and sit as a quasi-judicial board when required.
perfect. Who's next?
Vern.
Me?
We're jumping all over the place.
Yeah,
this
well,
time.
it's boring giving the same question all the time.
Since you're relatively new to the organization and the Planning Commission, what relevant experience, skills, and interests have prepared you for the Planning Commission?
Well, in Lake Oswego, I was a one-man band for 8 years, and we put together Mountain Park, which went across my desk and darn near killed me, and 650 acres of planned development assessed at $500 million. And worked with building and all of the departments that had an interest in it to see that come to fruition. And I was the Assistant Zoning Administrator of Clackamas County for roughly 2 years. Completed a land use survey of Portland Metropolitan District under what is now Metro. It was back then, it was the Metropolitan Planning Commission. Completed that and did a little consulting work and planning director for Wilsonville for 3. And there's a few other things in there I can't recall.
Other than that, not much.
Pardon me?
Other than that, not much.
I thought it was Craig before it was Metro.
No, before, I was even before Craig. Yeah, right, yeah. So, anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is the most important goal or purpose of the Planning Commission?
Well, it's to advise the City Commission on matters pertaining to growth and development, and to make proposals in terms of adoption of rules and regulations that govern that apply to that, to help and assist in developing a comprehensive general plan, to assist the Commission in any way, shape, or form that the Commission feels they need assistance in, and to recognize and accommodate state laws pertaining to planning, obviously.
You want to take the next
Who, me?
one?
Oh, thank
Yes,
you.
you.
I think you know the answer to this. I had to explain it a few times. How would you balance code requirements with public comments?
Well, code requirements are just that. They're code requirements. Public comment can be in unison with code requirements, or they can be directly in conflict. And code always trumps that, and you have to be compassionate, understanding in terms of anything which conflicts, and but you're always obliged, in my view, to recognize and apply code requirements, because it is the law. If you don't like the law, community-wise, not just one person, but community-wise, then the commission's advised by the Planning Commission to modify or change the law. And that's what we're here for, is to uphold the Comprehensive General Plan as it's accommodated by the zoning code. So zoning code always prevails. That's what we're here for, to build a quasi-judicial record that the commission can rely on as it is referred to them. So our decisions are based on the record and findings that we generate through public comment and a staff report, which I regard as foundational to our decision, because they do the heavy lifting from a technical point of view.
As a follow-up to that, Bob, so what good is public comment? Is it just letting them blow off their steam, or do we not listen to them?
No, I'm not saying that public comment is not good, because that can be entered into the findings, you see. But there are those that come down whose comments don't literally apply to the application that's in front of you. It's superfluous.
Right.
And those were the hard comments, the hard decisions have to be made.
But sometimes maybe the public comment brings to light something that we're not aware of.
That's true, yeah. Most of it's attitude. It's not specific and it's not technical. Okay. You know, when I hear traffic, I've heard it, you know, and that we've adopted a comprehensive traffic safety plan. It's policy, you know, and we've adopted certain standards in that, which may not be agreeable to the general public, but they don't know that, but it's our responsibility to enforce it.
They live it, we apply it.
Yeah, it's only $252 million worth of solution, which I don't have on me at the moment, but
Bring that checkbook next week.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Today was the
Okay, thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
I thought, you're right, Zach. I thought that was today was the day. we were supposed
If
to
I
bring the
hear a
checkbook.
question I don't like, do I have to answer it?
No, yes, you
okay,
do.
all right.
Yeah, you have, here's,
Because I know one's headed my way.
let's see, did I get everybody except for me?
I think I haven't answered one
Okay,
yet,
you're next.
or asked one yet. Are you available to read the materials and attend the hearings?
You still have the eyesight.
Well, when you say read the material, I think there's some suspicion that I don't digest it completely, you know, and I'm not about to. Not 52 pages of testimony that have to do engineering boilerplate. But yes, I'm available, and I do read the staff reports as best I can, and do not get reimbursed for the ink that I use to print off.
I'm working on that.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm working on that.
are you?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm right behind you.
Well, the
That's
trick
what I-
is not to print it in the first place. The trick is not to print it in the first place.
Yeah, well, my printer
People
broke.
just have no ability to be able to read and comprehend and flip back and forth.
Yeah,
on
I
a
like it
computer.
in front of me, you know.
It's nice
Yeah.
to have the pages.
Unless you have one of those huge screens that's got 2 pages.
That's what
Well, I like something I can shuffle in public so people think I know what I'm talking about.
Yep. Look up why PowerPoint caused the shuttle disaster. It's a very interesting reading.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So Bob, what neighborhood association do you live in?
You're a Rivercrest.
Rivercrest.
Good people, there's about 3 or 4 that apply, that attend on a regular basis, you know. I like the idea
Are
and the
you one of the
concept.
3 or 4?
Do you go? Yeah.
No, I usually at some other meeting, you see.
All right.
Oh, that's right, he's got traffic.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Good, go for it.
Oh.
Well, I mean, before we get to Dan.
Oh, no, none from
I
me.
meant for you,
No.
before we go to Dan. That's what I was asking. If you had any follow-ups before we go to the last
We
one?
already know what
And
Tom.
from all your answers, we kind of gathered that you have a vague understanding of the quasi-judicial process.
I do.
He does know how to spell it.
And
I've
Dan
seen
already
it.
gave him the question and the answer on this one. I'm kidding.
So, Bob, if a proposal comes before the planning commission that you have a personal problem with, could you put your personal bias aside and decide only on the code and the law?
Depends. If it was the overhead sewer system through my driveway, you know, I might excuse myself. But yeah, I mean, we have to declare that, I think, in our conflict of interest that we go around. And certainly if it was significant enough, I would recuse myself. I know people, that's a tough word, you know, recuse and accuse and recuse.
Recuse, yeah.
And, but I don't see that as a problem. If there's a perception that you have a conflict of interest, then I think you ought to excuse yourself from voting and explain why. Sometimes the perception is worse than the actual, fact itself. So I don't have a problem with that. I think that this commission, in my experience, has been excellent in that regard.
Well, we want to, we'll check the calendar for July to make sure that you're here, for my birthday, and will not be going off on your anniversary trip, so.
Well,
Because you complained
I appreciate the
you
invite.
missed out on the cake.
I really do. I'll go down to Dollar Tree and start shopping.
Okay, well, I don't want you to miss out on the cake.
The cupcakes?
No,
You call it a
it's real
cake?
cake.
Last time I got one, it was hard,
No,
you
it
know?
was real
I looked
cake.
at the date, it was a year
No,
old.
I don't scrimp.
Yeah.
So anything else you'd like to tell us?
Yes, there is. I know there's no guarantees in this. I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, and also thank you for your generous camaraderie, so to speak, for the last 6 years. I love all you guys. You got bright, shiny minds, and you're not bashful about expressing them. Fair? No, that's what I like about it. Nobody's afraid to express their feelings, and nobody gets their feelings bruised But I do want to emphasize the fact that the Planning Commission is an advisory body to the commission, and they act as a team and hopefully unanimously support the policies that the commission comes down to. We sort of kind of, it's a strange thing, we sort of kind of work for the commission, but we don't because we're quasi in nature, and so therefore we're expected to behave in a certain manner and conduct our business in that regard. And that places us with a hat that sometimes fits and sometimes doesn't, but we're stuck with it, and thank God we are, because planning in the state of Portland state of Oregon without that quasi-judicial title, I think would be in dire straits, because growth is coming this way, folks, and it's in the form of a tsunami. And we've got to have some place where people can get educated, can live, and can work. And that's our responsibility, the long and the haul of it. And I think as long as we understand it, that we are an advisory board to the commission, and they are elected by the electorate, and we all work in unison to make our land use policies work, then the idea of a guy coming down here and shaking his fist and say, I don't like what you're doing, to me, let him speak, but he doesn't have too much sympathy for me because we're trying to enforce our laws. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, I wanted to conclude, which I haven't done with all the other applicants, but just say thank you for your closing remarks, because one of the things that I've told you guys that I appreciate, and I say guys because we are all guys, I appreciate the fact that we have a diversity of opinions, and I think that makes our community stronger when there are diversity of opinions, because we all don't know everything. Yeah. And if we all thought the same, we might not be in the same position we are today. But I think because we have differences of opinion and we balance those differences of opinion, it helps make us a stronger team. And Laura will be asking you for your T-shirt size later, because we're going to be ordering.
Yeah, I've got my envelope here for
the planning commission team shirts that we're going to all get for next year.
Can I be a bike jersey?
Yes, we'll have a bike jersey. Yes, well, you can have a bike jersey. We're going to have the team T-shirts and polos, whatever works. So
you don't get.
I appreciate that.
One more thing in closing that I have noted,
Bob, honestly,
is that we do the planning under a legal umbrella. And lately, in the last couple of years, most of what we've seen with applications coming before us, half of it is legal, and I'm not a trained attorney, and the other half is planning, and I'm a trained planner. So what I'm saying to you is we've got to be real careful about how we approach the legal aspect of it and turn it over to our legal attorney who advises us on legal matters. Process. Let us do the technical stuff with her assistance. But when it comes to the legal aspect of it, let the attorneys do their job. So when that findings of fact go before the commission for their consideration, it's a record of the findings based on the legal requirements in the state of Oregon. Let the attorneys do their work, let the planners do theirs. And then the commission can do its, is that a word? Do their job.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
2 things have changed my life. 3 things: marriage, kids, the military, and they're just stepping stones along this journey, and I've appreciated working with all you. I know there's no guarantees this might be the last time I appear before you, and so anyway, happy holidays, folks.
Okay, Bob.
Been a pleasure.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Am I free to go, or would you prefer it?
Please.
Yes.
Okay.
You almost.
So would the commission like me to bring in all of the applicants for you guys to discuss, or do you just want to vote? How do you want to handle that?
Just want to vote.
I think I want to have a discussion, but I don't want to do it in front of them.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah, if I discuss, I'd rather deliberate and
I'm not staying for deliberations.
Okay.
He's already made up his mind.
All right, so.
I'm kidding. I'm giving you a hard time, Dan.
Okay.
I'm going for the candy now.
So I
Candy now.
agree with Paul. If we have to have them here to deliberate, I would rather just vote.
They're coming in.
Not yet. Just give us a minute.
but
This is
I
the
mean,
slowest
it should
door
be easy.
ever.
So we're going to vote, or are we going to just?
You guys don't need to vote as a group, you would vote as an individual, but you
Right,
can
right.
talk about the applicants if you like.
I just don't know how productive it's going to be.
Yeah, instead of just talking about every single one of them.
Well, no, if you have anything in general that you noticed, maybe that's kind of what I was thinking.
Well, I think there was
thinking about.
one applicant that stood head and shoulders above the rest in terms of their experience with the planning commission and code, and the city code. That's all I've got to say.
I will, having been through this, well, twice myself, and maybe 2 times through the commission, I appreciate the fact that people apply, but I also have a concern that sometimes I think it's a little bit out of people's league in a way. I mean, and what I mean by that is that this is not a commission or a group that you can do a lot of on-the-job training. If you know something, it helps you along your way, although we're all learning. I mean, I'm not saying that I know everything. I learn something every time we have a meeting and every time I read a packet. It's always about learning for me. But to start from absolute nada, it's hard. So I noticed too, some of the applicants had applied for multiple positions. And I know that one of the applicants got interviewed the other night and was recommended by that particular body because one of the members of my neighborhood board is on that group and told me, and I said, oh, okay, well, that's good. Just in passing, that's all, they just said that. So how is that working?
People could sit on multiple committees if
Well,
they like.
I understand that, but how does that work for us?
It's not really relevant because you asked them if they could attend the meetings and do the work, and I mean, you heard their responses, so.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody would say yes, they could.
I think some people did a better job of answering the questions than others.
Well, that's always the case. It's
Yeah.
it's just like a mini job
And it's
interview.
not because they were, it's just because a lot of them just didn't have the planning experience or they didn't have the background to answer the question.
I was going to say in direct response to what you're saying and what Diane, but
Whatever you want to call me is fine.
Denise said, I'm enjoying my chocolate. You guys brought me on with no experience on the planning commission.
Well, your
And-
experience was,
But you were in
CIC.
Yeah,
And
that-
all that knowledge, and some of these people have had that. And I guess at some point, like when somebody runs for president, they may be experienced as being a president, they've had their 4 years, is it time to choose somebody different? I don't know. And so I keep thinking, is it time for new blood? Do we go for experience? Do we go for new blood to start evolving? Because sooner or later, we're all going to be dropping off. I'm down around the same time as Bob in 2020. But we do need to start training other people and bringing them in. And we're not always going to get
but I
planning
think the
people.
way to do that is not
Just a thought.
to jump to, my
No,
personal
just a
opinion is,
thought.
this is not the way to get that. You kind of work your way up through the system,
Mm-hmm.
and so being on CIC, you got to hear a variety of issues and things come before you, including land use. I mean,
But it
that-
was not a planner.
No, it didn't have anything to do with that. It had to do with your familiarity with it, and you dealt with a variety of topics, including transportation, planning, neighborhood. I mean, it was a broad cross-section, which really, in my mind, gave me confidence that you'd be able to jump in with both feet and be able to, hit the ground running. And we have a lot of people in this community who are really, really anxious to get involved in things. And, it's the one thing when I was briefly representing my neighborhood association on CIC, I encouraged people that I would meet in the community to get involved, start small, and then see how you like that. And then if you are really excited about it, then you can go for the next thing, I mean, just, so get familiar, figure out what's going on.
So
because-
some people have served
Yeah.
on their neighborhood associations
Yes,
and
yeah.
other capacities.
Yeah.
And that's what I was listening for as
Yeah.
well tonight, to see
Yeah.
how well-rounded their experience. They've lived in the city for a long time, not just a few months or what.
Yeah.
So I was listening to all the details of that.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you guys were saying, that there was some people that didn't really respond to the question. They didn't understand, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was
And I
kind
was
of,
also looking for wisdom too.
and I was
Yes.
kind of hard to,
People who think.
That's, because I think that
there's
one
common
of the things
sense.
that this body requires is synthesis. I mean, it's one thing to know the code, and it's one thing to, have experience in neighborhoods and all that stuff, but I think you really do have to be able to think on your feet.
Yes.
And put thoughts together and, basic, have it all code-based and be able to render a good decision.
I think it's
on
more
all that.
think on your seat.
Yeah.
Well, it is on your feet.
With all your people,
And
they
I-
come in
Yeah.
and picking out the best parts of the stew, of their testimony, and separating
Wheat from the chaff,
the wheat from the chaff.
as Bob would like to say.
There were
Yep.
several of these people that I think could make very good planning commissioners. I think I'm really
Absolutely.
happy with like that we had applicants.
Yeah,
I think they're,
Hang on, go ahead.
I think the decision for the number one position is pretty obvious. But there were 2 and 3, and I don't know how everybody else is going to rank 2 and 3, that could be considered for other boards and
that's kinda
even
how I
for
felt.
the planning commission. It might be a little tough to make that leap, but I'm sure we wouldn't necessarily have to turn all of them away.
Yeah, I would
2 and
encourage
3
someone
were
to
in
reapply.
pretty good shape.
I would encourage several of them to get more involved.
Well, that goes, yeah.
Are we going to be telling them this tonight? Because we
No.
can't say anything until Dan's made his decision,
We
correct?
can't say anything.
I think that becomes
think we-
So we can't
Laura's
encourage
job,
them.
right?
We'll probably never see them again, so we can't encourage them to try for something else. That's up to
Well,
Dan or
I
somebody.
can bring them in
Well,
if you want to say something to
Several of them
them.
have already done that. This person has applied for 3 things.
I only tried for one.
Let's bring these
Yeah,
guys in
yeah.
and thank them for their time
Yeah, we
tonight.
did, we
finish
did.
up. And,
See, 2 on that one.
Bob,
Yeah.
applied for two.
and bring some closure.
How do you know what they applied for? Oh, you
says
see it
right there.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. You want mine too?
You don't like this? Oh, this is the best. I ate a whole bag one night.
You ate a whole bag of Ferrero
You
Rocher?
should have seen my blood sugar.
Oh my God, did you like flip out?
Yeah, oh my God.
He must have been flying. Did you get your house all
I
cleaned?
eat
and-
one of those and.
It was better than that 2-pound bag of M&Ms I eat.
Blood pressure goes
And if I had too much sugar, I could clean my house and about 10 other houses. It's like, we're talking about eating sugar, so
Yeah,
right now, so
yeah.
anyway.
Are you guys the only guys that are left?
Yeah, everybody else went home.
Oh, well, we can't make any decisions tonight, but we wanted to wholeheartedly thank you for your time tonight and in participating in our selection process. And we hope you have a really good holiday and hopefully,
You voted
Hope to see you again.
yeah, we can see you guys again. Anybody else?
No, I think I said it all when I
Okay.
thanked everybody.
All right,
I thought
stay
that
warm.
I
Thank
thought that
you.
I had adequately.
And
Said
what kind of food do you cook in your food cart?
We, right now, are doing mostly pies and hand pies, sweet and savory.
Oh,
Is it open now?
He's ready to eat.
My wife
You have
is
yours?
at home,
yeah.
but yeah, it's those and then pastry. My wife is a classically trained French pastry chef, so.
You want to hand me all your notes and stuff?
These notes are,
We have a vote.
I can read them if you need interpreter.
No, we have to turn them in.
I'm never going to write anything
Okay.
again.
No, that's okay. She made.
Are we supposed to-
destroying them.
Oh, do you
All
need
right,
this?
so if you want to hand me your
Oh, the
tally,
comment
your
sheets.
comments,
Okay.
your vote sheets, as well as your
And
comment
then their
sheets.
resumes and stuff, we don't really need to keep that.
We don't need to keep that.
No,
She's an
Okay.
amazing chef.
What a waste of a tree.
it's okay. I had to print all mine
Yeah.
out.
It's a few trees worth of paper.
Oh, you turn those in too?
Yeah, yeah, we really shouldn't keep those.
Okay, right. Oh,
So
absolutely, right.
just, she can run them through the shredder. Thank you, guys.
Go home and watch television.
Thanks, guys.
I'm sorry, but I was under the impression in my brain that there was a whiteboard in here.
There's never been a whiteboard.
Well, I know, and somehow or another, I must have been someplace else in the alternative universe in City Hall, there was a whiteboard there.
You being biased? What's happening?
And I
with
wanted to,
whiteboards?
when we go into the next part about our work session, I wanted to write some things down on a whiteboard,
I
but
can type them for you, and I have some other stuff in front of you
But-
as well.
maybe do we have any of those big giant Post-it note sheets?
No, I think we should have those clear lucite ones with the projections like in the movies. Like those CIA movies.
Yeah.
I think that.
I remember.
I once had to give a speech at one of the trust conferences, and I had my speech mostly memorized, but they had the little clear lucite thing that was projecting my speech on there, so you could look, yeah, it's like a teleprompter, so you could kind of glance over and go, okay, did I say that? Did I thank everybody? But I only looked at it once. It's really weird. It's over there and it's moving through while you're, and people can sort of see it, but it becomes invisible. When you're up there and there's all the lights are shining on you and everybody's in the dark and it's sort of like over here and it's just going away and you're looking at the audience but you can see it right there. You can see it right there as it's scrolling through.
That's how the military jets are. They project a
heads-up display.
I was going
Yeah.
over Denise's
on the
comments
inside
about the
screen.
whiteboard, because I remember the nuns with the blackboard. If you got disturbed, they'd do their nails on the blackboard. Hated that.
You had mean nuns. I didn't have any mean nuns. Oh, wait a minute.
We
Here's a
had
couple more.
erasers that could screech just
Oh,
like that. You
I
didn't
got in
have
trouble
to
getting
use
the
your
back.
fingernails.
I got in trouble with the back of the nun. With
So did Bob leave?
Bob did leave?
Oh, well, I thought he was going to come back for the work session.
Call him back.
Oh, well, we have
you know what?
a summary from Bob fresh in our head. So
Does the vision and the mission stay the same or each year as a part of Oregon City, or does it change with each mayor or each year?
It's the mayor's not the one that has responsibility. It's the commission's goals, not the mayor's
The
goals.
vision and the mission?
It's the commission's goals and mission.
Yeah, the
It's
commission,
not one person.
But does it change every year, or is it something that's standard?
We have 2 years. Biennium. We have
the commission reviewed it at the biennium when they did the goals. I think they changed one word, maybe not.
That's what I was wondering.
But, yeah, so the commission as a whole reviews the goals
That's way too many goals right there.
every other year with the biennium. We have, as you know, we have a biennium budget, and that goes from, we just passed it, and it started in July 1st of this year, of 2017, and it'll go until the end of June in 2019.
Hey, Elaine, is Bob coming back to be at the work session with us?
I think he's,
Did we start in the year 217?
Oh, typo.
Hey, I thought you were going to come
Just
back for the
me.
work session. We've got planning commission goals, and we're having a work session.
where did this little book? I don't seem to
No,
have
that's tonight.
it. I probably
Okay,
got one.
come
but I
on back.
lost
Okay,
it.
we'll see you in a few. Okay,
Okay.
all right, bye.
Dan took it?
See, I told you he
You have another one
forgot.
of these for
Yeah, there's one before everybody.
think
I
Dan-
know,
Dan
but I
took
may
it.
have lost
Then there
mine.
should be one around the corner,
Dan didn't know
too.
what they were, he took one to read it.
It might be over
Well,
there.
that's
Oh, no, he
theirs.
knows what
That's
they
not
are. He
ours.
adopted them.
They
They're-
do these times.
But they're city commission
No, but he
priorities.
didn't know what they were, so he.
That's not nice.
Are you sure that's not Bob's?
I'll give Bob mine.
Here's mine.
Okay, all right.
I could get you more.
That's all right.
So I do have
Bob's
a-
on his way back, so we can go slowly, a little bit slow.
So I can introduce what I have before you, but I also just kind of want to figure out how you want to do this process. So there's a few things before you, and I have some on the screen behind you as well. First is our municipal code. So as you know, Chapter 2.24 of the Oregon City Municipal Code talks about the Planning Commission. And the thing that we want to look at is 2.24.090, which is the powers and duties. And so it's actually a really long list of stuff.
And you're having us look at this because you think we forgot about it, or you want to refresh our memory, or?
or you want to see if we can keep up with you
Squirrel,
scrolling?
yeah, please don't do that. That was like giving myself.
I'm buying you time before
Yes, it was
Commissioner
giving me-
Mahoney.
it was kind of
But I
giving me
mean,
a weird freak out hit.
there's two things, right? Because we're talking about goals and goals. We haven't done it very much, right? I mean, we don't have a lot of goals in Planning Commission. I was trying to look in.
We did it when I first came on the commission when Charles was the chair, and that's the last time we've done it, which is why Bob said we needed to do it.
Yeah, so I have a packet, in your packet on the very bottom was all the goals that I had found from the Planning Commission in years past, and it goes until I think 2003 or something. But the last one I could find was from 2011 and 2012, which was a list of goals and objectives. Because we're talking about goals and objectives, I wanted to, and it's been a while, it's certainly my first time having this conversation with this board, although we do it with other boards like Historic Review Board, is to sort of look at what our inputs are. How do we figure out what a goal is? So we always start everything with saying what is the duties of this commission, and so they're listed in 2.24.090. A lot of the duty. The other part of that is we want to make sure that the goals that are set by the commission are achievable and that they're in keeping with the city commission goals. And so, as you know, we had talked last year when we set our goals, I think it was last January, there were some initial discussions about inputs into the goals and priorities for the city commission when they set their budget, which was again effective this past summer. And so we kind of have a little bit of this discussion slightly, but as it related to influencing the budget. So if you were to say, for example, have a goal to redo the comprehensive plan or something like that, that has a lot with it. It has a lot of staff time and monetary necessities with that. And so I had proposed a list to, if you guys want to do your goals through the budget cycle, and they should be synced up with the budget cycle so that we make sure that we get whatever your asks are funded. And that we put it into the scheme work of everything else that we're doing and making sure that we have the adequate staff capacity and funding to do whatever it is that your goals are.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm confused, and Denise will probably hit me up with this one. I'm confused that our goals aren't necessarily what comes before us as planning. We have the annexations, the land use, all those things. Our goals, I would think, are just to be knowledgeable and to help. But I mean, all this other stuff I'm looking at here, I'm going, we can't be involved in all this. We're not the ones who
We're here to make policy.
Let me give you
Policies,
me give you an example of, that's why I wanted a whiteboard. So an example of something that we talked about, that I went back through my notes over the last couple of weeks. There were two things that came to the forefront of my notes. So number one was we had requested as a priority, and maybe it's a goal, I think it's a goal, we have that situation in Kenema where the water resource overlay has not been adequately mapped, and we wanted to make sure that got done. And then number two, Bob was very insistent, as we all were, as we wanted to go back and take another look at the lot averaging. So that's a specific project.
So those are our goals.
But no, I'm just saying those are things that those are the two, like, so it's like cream. So the cream came to the top, and of the things that we talked about, those rose to the top of some of my notes, and I had highlighted them, so when I go back through my notes, I can go, okay, that's something we talked about, that's something we talked about. So those are things that we think need to be looked at. How we get to them through the budgeting process, you have time, to me, is the second part of it. I think right now what I was envisioning we'd do tonight is we would throw out some things that we think are important, put together a list, and then take that list and look at what we feel might be the priority, hone it down, figure out, let's say, I don't want a list of 20 things. I think we can probably achieve 4 to 5, maybe.
Right. That's
reasonably.
The reason I asked Denise is tomorrow night isn't the work session about that, about the
no, it's about the alternative mold. No,
but
it's
also
about,
they're going to be speaking
yes,
about
but not
average.
with us.
That's just what I'm saying. We're not even involved in it.
Yes,
so
I know. So that's why we're going to.
I'm going to impress your colleagues.
Yeah,
It's just that we love you so much that I wanted you to come back.
Hey, I can't blame you.
I think that's,
You almost got away.
I was thinking about stopping at Howell's, but I said, well, she'll find out. So, yeah, you guys found out.
that's the thing about the goals, is that it really is us working together, right? Because we all don't have unlimited resources. We want to acknowledge many things. One is that the Planning Commission doesn't set policies for the city. The City Commission does, but the Planning Commission can say, hey, City Commission, here's stuff that you need to take a look at. And conversely, the Planning Commission can't set, oh, sorry, Siri thinks I'm talking. The Planning Commission can't set a big workload for the planners because there's some separation there, right?
FTEs.
And so I put together a stack of paper, and we'll all take a look through it. But one of it is I wanted to acknowledge what the existing goals are for the city and what the planning department's roles are, because there is a long list. Because we're looking at what is our capacity to move forward. And so,
Before you move on, yet I want to express my frustration that why come to a meeting tomorrow night or work session when we can't even address them as the planning commission, because it's between the city commission on the lot averaging. They're not even listening to us. They're going to have a meeting without our input.
well, but they're having City Commission set a work session to talk about lot averaging because they heard you say there's something wrong here. And so they wanted, but at the work session, they're just trying to figure out, all right, tell me more about it. What's going on? And then they may or may not set some policy direction to work on something. But if they do, you certainly will see it,
But
right?
that's just it. Tell us what's going on. They're not going to hear from us because we're not included in that portion of the meeting. So tell us what's going on, you said, and what's this all about. Well, we don't get to address them and tell them our concerns about it. They can. None of them watch the tape of us talking about it.
I understand your frustration, but the Planning Commission can't set policy. The City Commission sets policy. And they heard from you that there was a concern. Well, no, I mean, they set a work session because they heard that the Planning Commission had an issue with the code. And so they set a work session to talk more about it and learn more about it. We don't know, will there be 5 more work sessions after that? Will there be a joint work session? Will they have staff create a task force? I don't really know. This is just the first step to figure out what that problem is.
But
and
you know what I'm getting at? You said just a few minutes ago to understand what the problem is and talk about it, but we're the ones who got involved in the first place, yet they're not. All they heard from us is that we were a little upset by it. I would like to be able to sit there and talk to them and say, this is what I think Bob mentioned, I mentioned, other people have mentioned it, but I would like to address them on a work session, but they're not listening to us on that work session. It's just amongst themselves.
Well, what I'm hoping in lieu of that is that they will just refer it back to us to dig into it so that we can come up with some ideas to solve and maybe modify that section. That's my desire. I mean, I agree with Tom that I would like to be able to participate and say, well, here's kind of what we think about it, or here's kind of what we saw. But moving on from that, that's my desire, is that they will say, yeah, we think we need to take a look at this, Planning Commission, why don't you guys take a look at it? Conversely, on the other hand, I think that we as a Planning Commission have the ability to set a couple of things that we think we need to work on, and we would then work once we decide what that is, and then we'd say to you, okay, how does this fit in? Can we do this? And can we do one of these things? Can we do both of these? Maybe we can do one thing. And so we decide what is the one thing that we need to do in addition to, the lot averaging, which we know is going to come back to us because they don't have the time or ability to delve into it the way that we probably would be able to. So I'm okay right now with that.
No sense for me to go to the meeting tomorrow night.
Well, the first part of it is with us. We're going to talk about alternative mobility standards. So that's our part. We will be there with them having a discussion about that. So,
Well, Denise, you say you're okay with it. I'm not. And I'll tell you why. I'm not disagreeing with the principle of what you're saying. But when you say we,
well, did you hear me say that I agree with Tom that we should be involved in the discussion? But in lieu of that, since we're not going to be involved in the lot averaging tomorrow night, I'm hoping they just refer it back to us.
well, let me finish my thought here. My thought is, process to gain us credibility as a planning commission. And what it does, it includes the planning department, which is shorthanded, which is going to be more than just a little bit of a study. Do we do it on consensus? Do we do it on a resolution? Do we do it by vote? How do we transfer our thoughts as a group with one document representing what we're thinking as a policy, as a proposed policy, to get their attention so that they've got something formal in front of them? It's just not a comment here and a comment there and a comment there. I mean, what's that add up to? That adds up to a bunch of comments, somebody's opinion.
Well, what I'm hoping is that I echo Denise's comments about having the commission direct staff to work with the planning commission on revamping that part of the code. And then through the legislative process, they bring it back to us and we talk about it at that level.
And we've got a process.
We're just there to want like Paul to tell them.
Well, I know, but staff will be, and I think that maybe they can help guide the discussion.
Keeping that as the boundaries of the common.
Exactly. So I think again, the reason that I was interested in, to back up where I was going, is that we're going to be giving, and I say we are going to be giving a report to the city commission on what we've been doing. And I would like, in addition to that, to be able to say, and here are 3 priorities that we feel we would like to work on. And we are in discussions with staff about how to do that. We want you to know that these are things we feel are important. So it's not just, okay, here's what we've done over the last year, but here's the present, and here's our direction. And so you and I have talked about this, and I think you and I are in agreement.
We get it on record.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
You see, but we don't get it on record by somebody's comment.
No, we're not, no,
That's
in
the work session.
For us, this is our work session. This is where our comment is going to come, and then we're going to solidify that into writing so that when we give the report to the commission, we can say, and we've had some discussion about this, and because I heard a consensus from all of us, including Damon, that that's something we need to move forward on.
Yeah.
And they know it. We want them to know that we agree with that, and it is our hope that that's going to be referred back, and we'll go there.
I agree with that.
So that's where we are right now today. So
you take the issue that was discussed and you had a consensus, and then you formulate that.
That's what I will be doing.
And in the formulation, you put it on record. Now it's a matter of public record.
Exactly.
All right? And that's what a planning commission's part of the responsibility is.
You and I are all,
If they bring it
we're
back
all in the same.
But there's the other thing too. You got to
think they
understand
will.
that these people at the planning department, they're up to here.
We know that.
I don't feel the city commission watches and listens to what we do.
Well, I think that they are going to be very interested in what we have to say.
I think they are too.
I agree. But isn't part of the vision here, or the issue, that our communication channel to the city commission, we can do it haphazardly when we meet them in different places in the city, but the designated channel, I think, from our goals or visions is through the staff. And when we do a good communication through the staff, then staff can take that to the city commission in the proper setting. And we need to have some patience while we're waiting for an answer.
I disagree, because the staff came back in that meeting where they
Wait a second. Wait a second.
Let him finish.
Upset with the whole process.
Something that happened a month ago or thereabouts on lot averaging. I don't know if we've used the right channel to communicate that fully to city commission. I think it's through planning staff director that takes it there. But we can't expect the answer tomorrow or next week.
He's not saying that.
They've got to work through it, and we shouldn't sit here in predetermining or try to predetermine what is the answer that's going to come from city commission.
Vern, you don't understand, they're having a planning work session tomorrow night, and they're gonna discuss it, and we're not a part of that meeting. They're gonna discuss it at their work session.
That's true, that's true, that's true.
And we're not a
And-
part of it.
But you can't predetermine what's the outcome of that meeting.
We've already seen what the city commission did the last time.
Well,
We weren't
now
allowed to
that-
speak at that meeting.
Now,
Okay, so
I still say you have
let me
to use
try
the
to-
proper channel and.
Proper channels don't
and
work all the time in
have-
this city.
Let me try to
That's a
bring
poor
consensus to
attitude, I
this.
think, to
It's my
have.
attitude towards the city.
So
right now.
I agree with you on everything, but I feel very strongly that we can speak for ourselves. I don't want to put staff in the position of trying to speak for us on every occasion. We have the ability as a commission, if we wanted to go to every single city commission and speak to something on items that are not on the city commission agenda, we could do that if we wanted to. Now, we don't do that, and I'm glad we don't do it, but we have the ability to speak directly to them based on our consensus or something. You know, we could say, okay, the spokesperson from the planning commission is going to be Zach, and he's going to go represent us and speak to the city commission about X. So we have the ability to do that if we so desire.
I don't disagree with that at
So-
all. We have that.
So we have,
ability,
we have many avenues to be able to speak to the city commission. When we speak as one commission with consensus, it's great. Sure, I get stopped by Brian Shaw all the time about this, that, and the other thing. He'll ask me, you know, something that's not about what we've done. He'll chat with me, or I'll see, you know, somebody from a neighborhood. I mean, as you say, it's not haphazardly, because definitely you see them making a beeline for you and you can't get away in the grocery store, so you gotta talk to them.
But I just want to back up for
So we have a lot of avenues. Depending on which avenue we agree is the best avenue for us, we can do that. There's nothing that's prohibiting us from doing that. The more that we can do with staff's assistance, the better we are, and put less of a burden on them. I don't want to add, you know, all of that, you know, well, the planning commission said this, or the planning commission said.
Exactly, and so what I'm thinking is, I'm backing up, and instead of talking about any specific issue, it's just
Right,
the process by which we deal with goals.
Right.
So what I would like to see, and I don't know if the commission would be interested in this, but just acknowledging that the planning commission has goals.
Yes.
And that they get incorporated into their goals, and then it feeds back down to us to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we can let them know.
So in
what
other
we're
words, like,
thinking.
in some places, they have retreats, like the commission goes on a retreat, they talk about what they want to do with the city. Planning commission doesn't usually go to that, but they do submit a list of goals that they want to work on for the year. And they look at those goals, and some of them they want to do, some of them they don't want to do. And they put them in the master set of goals, and then that's what we do for the year.
That's what we do here as well.
Yeah.
And
But I haven't seen a lot of input from the planning commission on
Well,
policy.
because we're doing it now.
Because we're doing it right on the ground. But
Yeah.
we just want to have it, we want to have the cream rise to the top a little bit more and have it more visible
Right.
to the commission, so that it gets pitched over there, so that it gets listed, and then we work on it for the following year.
yeah, I believe we did that a year ago. And I thought there was a couple items from the planning commission that we forwarded to the city commission at
There
the
might have been.
retreat. There was some NRC items and some CIC
Yes.
items too. And so then that made it into, but it was a long time, it was a year. That made it into the goals, and then it also made it into the budget stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
that I'm hearing your point that we could, next budget cycle, so this time next year, we'll be doing the same thing again, right? We'll be setting up for the next budget cycle, the biennium, but maybe having a dedicated work session where we're a little more thoughtful about what that information is or what that ask is to the city commission.
See, we need to be made aware of when we provide that input into their process, because it looks like we missed the boat already, on this.
But they're probably, for this, but
There was stuff.
they're gonna have a retreat again, and there's nothing that will prohibit us from saying, okay, we're a little early, we'd like you to consider this.
Yeah,
You know,
so
and the earlier the better.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's two things, is that we actually have the retreat every year. So they are
Yeah.
having a retreat in January.
Yeah.
But we're halfway through the budget cycle. And so if it's basically like, is there a problem that we missed that we need to amend or something like that? Or we can get in first with this list of like, we're a year ahead of a time to say, put this, amend the comprehensive plan next budget cycle, which is something that I would like to do. But, you could do either way. You can make a list now, and I could forward to the commission when we have our retreat, which is like the mid to late
And I'm
January.
hoping to get into the city commission for our report before they have that retreat. That would be my goal.
Yeah, I think that would, either a verbal report or a list or something that we can feed to them so that becomes a part of their process.
I want to have something.
Yeah.
Even if it's a one-pager.
I mean, one of the other specifics that we talked about last year was we had a whole room full of people talking about basements that were filling up with water. And we have a 15-year, storm horizon that, to be honest with you, ain't really working. So how do we deal with that? We're not engineers, but maybe we want to look at making our storm systems a little better or something.
So
Well, the one thing that we need to put on the list that we complain about at every meeting, because we have development coming in and clear cutting their property before they come in for any sort of development
There's that.
review. That was,
I don't know how far that's going to go
I
with this
know.
commission. But
it doesn't matter if it's gonna go anywhere.
we can put it on the list.
We've
Yeah.
put it on the list. We've said, look, we'd like to figure out a way to make sure that they're not developing, that they don't go in and clear everything off, because we've got slide areas, we've got erosion problems. We've seen this happen up in Park Place time and time again, and I know some of us went up and looked at it, and I was just like, oh my God, what the heck is going on here? If that ground had been able to be held for a little bit longer, keep that cover, instead of having it all wash into the system, come
Can
on.
I step back a minute? The reason I'm so hot under the collar about the issue I brought up is because we've already had another lot averaging come in since the first time. And I remember Mike Robinson coming up, with the same attorney coming up to me and said he realized how hard it was for me to even agree on something. We had those instructions or those guidelines on what we could ask and what we couldn't ask. I felt like I was being instructed by a nun of what I could and couldn't ask or what we could look at. I know that those are already in our codes. And I made a point that what was the word? I didn't vote no, I voted to abstain, because of the fact that I hadn't had a chance to read it all. What my concern is, I know the process of amending the code takes a long time. They're going to talk about it tomorrow night, then they may put it back on the back burner for a while, or they may send it to us. These code take a long time. In the meantime, we're going to have more annexations trying to lot averaging. And there is a lot of growth going on. Beaver Creek, Park Place, all these areas where I'm afraid they're going to start lot averaging and getting them in before we change the
Maybe we need to
code.
ask the city commission to put a
Moratorium
on lot
something,
averaging.
until we can decide, because that was 2 in a row, and we didn't have much chance to even discuss the coding, because that takes a while. Because
more
don't we
than
have to
that.
have hearings with people?
Yes,
And I'm sure there'll be a
absolutely.
lot of attorneys who come in and argue against it.
Yeah, so the lot averaging is a clear and objective standard. If you were to do a subdivision, it doesn't go before a planning commission. And we had the lot averaging standard in 2004, which was when it was first adopted. So most subdivisions use some lot averaging, maybe not to the degree that we saw.
Extreme.
I mean, but so.
I think it needs to be clarified. I mean, we've talked about this. I don't want to beat that dead horse. The intent of it is not the way that it has turned out.
Yeah.
My concern is the length of time it's going to take.
And so that's, again, maybe we ask the city commission
planning.
to put a stay on it. They've done it before to other things. So, I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out.
That is some of the stuff. So I appreciate all the comments on lot averaging, because I am going to talk to them about it tomorrow night. And so in the written thing and then the PowerPoint that I've already putting together too, I'll make sure to highlight the recommendation to go back to Planning Commission. I apologize, that wasn't in the written memo that I did.
Will you
but
make
there-
sure to send us that PowerPoint in case we decide not, I probably will not be staying.
Sure.
Just try to emphasize the unintended consequences that are playing out with lot averaging so that they clearly.
What are those
they
unintended
clearly see it.
consequences?
Well,
Huge lots.
the fact that they can do huge lots in one place and little teeny tiny crappy lots in other places.
And what-
Excuse my French.
No. And Well,
That's an
think that-
unintended consequence.
is there a thing that's wrong with that
And
that you would like me to
It
convey?
results in bad design.
I guess
So
it
you
should be
get
closer.
gigantic herking houses on little teeny crammed lots, and I don't think, in my mind, that's what we meant by a diversity of housing. That was baloney. Oh yeah, well, we'll provide a diversity. You know, have you been in any of the subdivisions up in the hilltop lately? You could get lost because you don't know where the hell you are because they all look alike. I mean, there's no diversity.
To
It's
me,
just one plan that they've done 5 times flipped. If they were talking about, you know, brownstones on this lot and a single family house here and this, and to me, that's diversity in housing. That's what we've got up there. That's not. That's just ticky-tacky excuse me if you live up there, ticky-tacky, you know, little boxes, Joni Mitchell subdivisions.
And that's part of lot
It's-
averaging, but it's not all.
And to tell us that that's providing a diversity of housing, to me, I'll be honest with you, it is a way for them to get around the code. We had subdivisions for years that had R6 lots, they were all R6, never was a problem before. So why did it all of a sudden become a problem?
Yeah.
Because now we're developing the land that's less desirable and has something wrong with it, you know, and I think that if we're gonna have an exception, there needs to be an exception, a real exception. Not because, well, you know, as one of those guys told us, well, we can do it and there's nothing you can do about it. You know, I certainly didn't appreciate that.
The lot averaging concept I have is the fact that when we did the first one, we said if you leave it at R10, you can still get down to R8s. It made a difference of 4 homes. You could still get down to R8s and you have some a little bit above and some below. But to
But
take it down to
everything-
R8 and then have all R6s because of those 3 huge lots took up everything. And then the next one came along and also had big lots. So
Well,
it's,
you know, it was the same engineers. So
yeah,
that's part
so
of
the
problem.
concern is that we would have been gladly said, leave it there and you can average it down to R8s, or I can't remember it right now, but the
Yeah.
point is not taking huge lots to average them down to R6s. And I can understand the neighbors being upset to have 3 homes behind them, and that may happen to me at some point in Park Place. It's just that you can't huge areas that nobody wants to build in and use those to average out all your homes. That's my thought.
And nothing in this conversation is to say that, you know, low or higher density zoning designations are bad or.
No, that wasn't it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we just want to see an actual good faith diversity in development. And I think that
They're using it as an excuse
we're
to
not
get,
really.
without, you know, to get
Yeah.
R 4.5 without having to go there.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that it is so at the same time that we had lot averaging, we also removed PUDs, and it is a way to get like a half step closer to
But
a
a
PUD.
PUD is a way different concept than what's going on with this lot averaging.
Right, so I was talking to some code special, I know we're off on a tangent, sorry.
No, we're fine. This
but
is good.
I was,
No for tomorrow.
I was talking to some code specialists about our code in particular, and the lot averaging, and their mind was blown as to why we didn't have a ton of variances, because people hadn't used the master plan process in the way that they used to use the PUD process. And in their mind, the reason was because of lot averaging, because you can, while still meeting lot width and depth, you can have the smaller lot sizes, and that's why there weren't a lot of variances, as opposed to other jurisdictions that do have a lot more variances to it. So it was like, not actually a PUD, but you're getting closer into that flexibility that a PUD got, but more clear and objective standards.
One other question on the regulations for the clear cutting. When I first moved here, I was told there was maybe they had it confused with Clackamas County, that there was a 5-year moratorium. If you cut trees, you couldn't build on it for 5 years.
I've never heard of that.
Somebody
but
told me
would be
that
great.
when I
It's
first
in
moved
Lake
into the city.
Oswego.
Is it Lake
If you
Oswego?
cut the trees before you annex, it's a 3-year waiting period. If the trees are big enough and they cut enough of them.
So we don't have anything
We
like
don't have
that.
anything like that.
So we don't have,
And it's kind of on the edge in terms of how we can do extra jurisdictional enforcement of our tree.
And one of the things I talked to Pete about is I want us to get rid of that thing in the code that allows you to cut trees down and pay money. That to me, that is in nobody's mind. How do we continue to be a tree city? No, you should not be able to pay to get rid of trees. If you don't want to plant trees, you get to plant them someplace else. You don't get to pay money into a fund. You have to plant them.
No, I understand what you're saying. So you can't just plant trees, you have to max out your tree planting on site, and then there are other options like plant them somewhere else in the city or pay the fee in lieu. And the fee in lieu
Should be really high
well,
to discourage people from doing that. 'Cause
But it
right
leads to
now,
tree planting.
when we adopted it, we figured out how much it cost the city to plant a tree. And then we have this arrangement with Friends of Trees, and literally one tree mitigation fee does pay for the installation of one tree, but along with it comes the education, the maintenance that comes with
I
Friends
will
of
add
Trees.
one other thing. Holcomb Boulevard has street toppers that says the end of the Oregon Trail all the way down. That was the road that brought him down into Oregon City. And behind us in Park Place is the last forest along the Oregon Trail coming into Oregon City. Yet last summer, all the neighbors were calling the city and calling the
see, that should have
county.
been taken into
and the whole-
consideration with
the whole forest is being taken down.
Barlow Road corridor.
Barlow Road, and it's all being taken down, and we can't stop it, and the city can't do anything, and Park Place can't do anything.
Actually, that's
The
why
whole forest is going.
I want to clarify what you're talking about with the regulations to prohibit tree cutting prior to development. I think the real crux of it is that we don't have a comprehensive tree code. We have did you say?
No.
We have tree codes from like, if you develop during this segment of time, then you
Before
mitigate.
annexation.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, other than if you're near a stream or slope, if you're in an environmental overlay, if it is relevant to a designation of a historic home, those are slightly different.
If we're
But
creating the wish list.
I mean, we really in some ways, some of these subdivisions that come in, they choose mitigation. They could have clear cut before they submitted their land use. And that's the scary part. I mean, the good part is that they do the right thing, in our opinion, right? Or they mitigate for the trees that they remove, but they don't have to at all. They could just clear cut them and then submit the land use and be just fine.
They should not be able to do that, basically for the reasons that Bob and I talked about, which is, there goes your topsoil, there goes everything. I mean.
So do you want me to, we're making a list.
What
do you want me to do on the
I have
list?
3 things. I have lot averaging, tree canopy.
What about tree canopy?
Well, just trees in general.
Just tree code.
Tree code.
So a citywide tree code, is that?
Well, I don't know if it's a citywide tree code, but
Tree code light.
Yeah.
something to do.
What does that mean?
Well,
Go ahead, Zach.
It can't just be city if
They could be
before
like
annexation.
phasing it in and like we do part of the tree code. and
Yes,
working it out
yes.
along
Yes.
the
And
road.
particularly as it pertains on our end from the development standpoint.
So individual property owners should not be regulated, but people who are large lot development should not be able to just clear cut a lot. And
For annexation.
Well, we could get into that in such a
Right,
discussion.
but I mean,
Right.
let's just say trees and gentlemen under that a subsection, which is maybe pre-development removal, or I don't know how we want to say it. but-
Okay, so is that okay on the
Pre-annexation.
regulations prohibit clear
They're
cutting
clearing
trees
that
prior to
whole
development?
forest now.
I would love to relook at food cart code.
For what code?
Food cart.
To allow them?
Right.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
we don't have food cart code, so.
I've heard that a lot downtown.
Yeah, I was almost going to ask this guy if he'd applied in Oregon City for
glad
his
you
food
didn't.
cart, but
I'm glad
I
you
decided
didn't.
against it.
Some
Well, you know
restaurants
what,
don't want
I'm
them.
really glad right now that we have that code, because we would not have gotten OP worst if we hadn't. And so they are a brick and mortar now, and it's perfect.
Yet some people downtown want it because they said it would bring people downtown. Because right now, Oregon City residents don't come
Where the hell are you
down.
gonna put a food cart in downtown?
They're saying in Liberty Plaza around, but seriously, when I get on lawn into Oregon City chit chat, everybody's saying there's no sense to come downtown if you have food carts. Almost all my customers come from West Lynn or Canby, Milwaukee, Gladstone,
heard that.
and Oregon City residents don't come downtown much.
Well,
Especially
I
since we
don't,
lost the print
well,
shop.
maybe they are not shopping at your shop,
No,
but
any shops, you can look up and down the streets and there's nobody down there.
I hate to disagree with you,
You
but
should be down there like
I am
all the time.
downtown 3 to 4 times a week, and I must run into I can't even go a couple of blocks without running into somebody down there that I know from Oregon City who is
7
shopping.
on, but not
Who is
past 7
shopping. I'm not telling you where they're going, but I'm running into people all the time.
There's so many shops that may be failing, even mine may go out this next year, because there's just nobody past 7th in our section of town, and when we discuss it on Chit Chat, they say, why don't you have food carts down there? And I'm saying, because it's not allowed.
Well, that's not.
Not that I'm encouraging them, because
Not the answer.
the restaurant owners are my friends.
So do you want to add more to the list or start to prioritize?
Well, it's basically wetland delineation in Kenema, so it's not just wetland, it's getting it delineated and getting it.
Or any other, and I think just maybe looking at the map in general to see if there's any other deficiencies where wetlands should be delineated.
I tell you right now, I think that that's like enough.
Is that what you're looking for, is prioritization?
All right, maybe that's.
Not,
good.
no, we're gonna come back and
Maybe that's too big.
prioritize. I think
Yeah.
tonight my goal was to get us to put a list together.
Oh, okay. So then I'll email out and you guys could prioritize and
fine,
send it back. Okay.
And that way we can funk on it,
So
barter, you know, I can give Tom a whole box of Ferrero Rocher, say vote for mine.
Give Tom some Tums.
I
Get Tums.
Could you bring the Tums?
No,
Rolaids.
so I did notice this piece of language in the code that I don't think very many people noticed, but the planning commission may receive gifts. Like, that needs to be talked about.
We have to declare them, because if it's $50 or more, then
But
we.
it's to the commission, though.
Fair
I'm not going
Oh,
to
you
tell
mean
you how
gifts?
much your bag.
So if I bring in cake, that's a gift to the commission?
It's, yeah. You just said.
But if one commissioner, it's different than if.
Yeah, that's not.
Oh, dear.
That's not a
Okay, so it
All right.
says, do you want me to start soliciting for gifts?
No, we're all kidding. Everyone on the
May take all
audience.
necessary action on
Yeah,
behalf
put
of the
on the
planning
list.
commission.
More gifts.
We're joking, everyone on the camera.
Correct.
Bob's smirking. Bob is smirking.
You guys are
He's
going
not
to get
saying-
me
His
in
eyes
trouble.
say everything.
I'm just
When
reading.
Irish eyes are smiling,
His
right?
lips are saying yes, but his eyes are going no.
Well, that's why we have findings to support everything that we do, right? Keep it all above
You
board.
know,
I move that we,
Bob was going to talk.
so I start talking and all of a sudden there's a motion being made? Is that the idea? Huh? I think that with all the planning commissions I've ever dealt with, that credibility is fundamental. And the one person that gets left out of the conversation, and the one person that's always dealing with curveballs and balls coming out of left field, in other words, surprises,
How about Tony?
is Tony, the city manager. We have got to understand, we're talking about now our credibility and where we fit in on the scheme of things. We've got to understand, because if we don't, we'll be fooling ourselves, and we're doing nothing but getting frustrated
Are
about
you
it.
thinking of something specifically in mind?
Yes, I am, if you'll let me finish.
Because I'm just trying to figure out where we're going.
Yeah, well, you know me, I'm Irish, so I'll talk around it until somebody asks me to get to the point. We function in this city under a city manager form of government who works who works for the city council. They set the policy. We recommend it. Now, if we want to retain our credibility, you know, and not be, oh, that's just a planning commission, you know, running off at the issues and policies, is that we've got to understand his responsibility for running this city in terms of managing the departments and managing a budget and being responsible to the city commission. We don't have the authority, really. We can work as a team, but we don't have the authority to direct her and her department to do anything. Now, really, as a city manager with his oaths, he's going to decide whether or not the budget and good management principles and communication apply in our circumstance. And it's a really delicate situation. I understand that. And I think you guys and us, me included, we're all right. But we got to understand the environment in which we work. And it's a city manager council form of government, see. And she works for him. And he will decide as to whether or not we can implement these things. I'm all for putting these things down and saying these were some of the things we'd like to look at, you see. But if I looked at that thing as a department head and I said, my God, that's 3 years worth of work to do anything professional, I could come back on a postage stamp and say this, but code-wide economic development plan, my God almighty, David Evans' association write a book on that.
That's yours.
Yeah, but my point being, this is all gonna cost money. It's all gonna go through the process of who's got the authority to do what. You see, we're advisory only. We're trying to push the ship of state in that direction. And so if we get real with ourselves and understand that, you see, and absorb it, because we're not all gonna be here for that much longer. There's gonna be other commissions.
Where are you going?
Where am I going? I'm going home and then get another phone call to come back.
We're real good.
But, I don't mean
How
to.
does setting code cost us money? I'm not clear. Can you explain that? I mean,
Okay,
about.
he's making the leap from, we put together a list, and then how does it impact? So let me say
How
this
does it
for
implement
the
it?
last time. We are just throwing stuff on the wall to say this is what we would like. Our next meeting, we are going to sit with staff and talk about it in such minutia your head will spin, and we will decide what we can and what we can't do. Right now, this is just the brain dump. Tonight is a brain dump only. We're not trying to solve the problem. We're just trying to identify what we think may or may not be a problem or an issue we've seen, like the food cart thing.
Yeah,
So-
but as long as we don't get any
We are not
underlying tones of expectation.
we are not getting ahead of ourselves. So that's, I don't want to say this one more
Do
time.
you speak for the entire commission, Denise?
No, I'm just saying, before you walk in the door.
You're not getting ahead of yourself.
This is what we said we were going to do. I said, this is what I would like to do at the last meeting. I said, let's just throw it out there.
Okay.
If it sticks, we get into the weeds at the next session and decide. Oh, this is great, but we can't do that. Or we say, this is really great, yeah, we can do that. Maybe we decide there's only one thing on here we can do.
But how do we know we can't do it unless we get feedback from Tony?
We are going to get feedback from Laura, who's going to tell us whether we can do it or not. We're going to talk about it.
Okay,
We're not there yet.
all right.
This is step one. So, is this enough for tonight? Enough stuff
Can
on
I
the
add,
wall?
can I add just the bucket of stuff, so that was helpful. The other stuff that we're already working on that is, I'm guessing some of it is a priority for the planning commission, but it's already on the list, is on here, and it's in some of the stuff. So this is the more detailed goals and priorities. And so I put in here some of the work that we're already doing, should it be a priority. So the list of stuff that is not already on the list, just acknowledging that there is other stuff that is on the list if you want to add that
We'll
too.
discuss
So,
more in more depth.
Okay, so yeah, there's the other.
I still have a question,
I'll stop
because
scrolling.
I'm not sure. Where does the cost come in to consider code changes? Is that in your time?
It's budgeting.
Yeah,
I
that's a
mean,
good
how does the
question.
code
It
cost budget?
costs time, money,
'Cause it's
everything.
words. I'm just wondering. I didn't know.
Yeah, legal.
They have to hire
Yeah.
somebody, they don't have the ability to
Good
do it.
point, legal.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's legal, there's consultants, there's a process, there's citizen involvement, there's I mean, you name it.
I think the other thing too that is, so there's the time and then the staff capacity, because we only have so much staff, and our priority is to short range because we have legal deadlines, right? And then, although we have the long range priority too, but if you have to kind of pick one. But a lot of the cost comes in is when you do things like this, it affects people's property value, and so we're required to tell them. And then also, we have these planner obligations to have open houses and stuff like that too. So the mailing notice alone goes out to more than 11,000 properties, and that costs a lot of money. Like just the physically postcard mailing thing, let alone
So to do
setting up
something like the lot averaging,
stuff.
we would have to mail out to everybody and.
It would be a
Yeah.
citywide, yes.
Yeah, it depends how you do it. If you remove it completely, yeah,
That's what I'm worried
you
about.
would have to.
Yes.
Hopefully it won't take that.
So,
That's what I'm worried about.
You know what my favorite part of working in the planning department was? My very
Everything?
favorite project was when it was budget time.
You are.
I hated that with a plague. Did not enjoy that whatsoever.
it's great.
It was the worst, and we all had to do it. We all had to sit there, and we all had to spend a lot of time. It was just like,
Coming up with.
it would like kill me now.
But it's wonderful because you can think of these long-term plans, and it's good that we're talking about these now, so we could start to think about it for our next budget cycle.
Yeah, because I noticed on here you guys are going to write implementation language for the Beaver Creek Master Plan.
Yeah, it took us about a year, but we got a grant for it for $100,000 from the TGM through
That's right, I can't move this.
grant through code assistance through ODOT. And so we're working on the scope of work right now. So you'll hear something about it soon because we'll probably want to poach one of you guys for advisory group, like alternate mobility and equitable housing. I think that's the thing about this year, long range wise, is we are.
Yeah, my money's good though.
The thing on that list for long range is insanely large because we're essentially rewriting all our code, whether it's through equitable housing, Beaver Creek Road implementation. The Falls Legacy project is still going on. That's the hard stuff, is balancing. That's the hard conversation for Tony, is it's like, you know.
Have they, for the Legacy project, have they shaken loose the
I
easement
took a
yet?
couple of pictures to give you an idea.
Cool. Did the property owner?
Yep.
We still have the easement and it's binding for the life of the land, so any owner it would apply to, but we're continuing to work with the property
I
owner.
thought there was some kind of a holdup on being able to start the project for some reason.
Yeah, we're continuing to work with the property owner to move forward with the Riverwalk.
Okay.
So, what should be on the list instead of a public works facility, a parks maintenance, it should be a citywide facilities plan, as I have said the B word about it many times.
Do you want me to add that to the list for
Because it does the
suggestions?
city no good to nickel and dime the library, the police station, then this, then this. It should,
that's true.
it makes no sense whatsoever.
I agree.
And I don't know why we've never done that.
I totally agree with that.
Well, isn't what we're talking about pretty much fall into the umbrella of the update of the comp plan?
That's the
And
problem.
You betcha.
Okay, and that's got to be a couple years out.
Yeah, but it needs to get on the list
But we
now.
want to start identifying things to shape it.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
And I'll keep a list too, when you guys come up with code things that you think don't work well, or larger policies or things like that. I keep spreadsheets and documents so that when we do change the code or something, we can come back and remember those things. So whenever we're having a hearing at the end, or after we're done with that item, just let me know to write it down and I will.
I've got one more harebrained idea.
Yay!
What if we were, instead of just doing an R10, holding zone after annexation, if we were to do some comprehensive planning and making some decisions on what would be appropriate for each area, what type of zoning designation would be appropriate for each area?
So-
R10,
Oh,
R5.
that's just forward thinking right there.
So when the properties do annex, they just slide right into the particular zone that they're in, so that there isn't this, because what bothers me is that it's just sort of this incremental approach that we're taking with zoning. And when the property annexes, it goes from, the R10, which was, maybe it was R10 for about 3 seconds, and then it goes to R6, or it goes to R5, or R8, or whatever. And then there's that layer of lot averaging, which we won't talk about anymore, but I was just hoping that we could maybe look at that more on a get out ahead of that stuff and look at, mapping this whole city and deciding what the appropriate zones are before the lots, the territory's annexed.
Paul?
Yeah. Not like-
That happens in some zones, doesn't it? We have some property coming into the city and annexation, if it's coming in as a 2 or 3.5, I think there's a 5 in there.
Yeah.
But where it gets a little fuzzier is all the rest of the property currently comes in as a 10, 8, 6, that community.
10, and that's where
And that's where the change comes.
Yeah.
I think what you're suggesting, and it may be I don't know how much change has to happen.
That's a big project.
You're
That's not a
asking to
small
bring
project.
some of it in as R6,
Yeah.
in some areas 8 and 10, instead of, I don't know if it's simpler to bring it all in at 10 and figure it out later, or, but that's what you're looking at, I think.
It's not working
And
for us
we've been
right
doing
now.
a really good job of, with the master planning, that's what, that's what I'm hoping, is that like when property annexes into those master plan areas, that they slide into whatever zoning designations are in those plans. Is that,
That's
is that gonna
the
happen?
theory.
That's what needs to
theory.
happen.
They're sliding into, so Oregon City has a comprehensive plan which does the low density, medium density, and high density residential, for residential, for example. And so if you're in the low density residential comprehensive plan designation, when you annex in, if your transportation system allows it, you would default to R10. If you're in the medium density residential, if the transportation system allows it, you would default to R5, but there are other zoning designations that you can go to. So some cities have, just like what you said, this one map system where rather than have this bigger, higher picture map of low density residential and then you have R10, 8, 6, it just says, here's what the zone will be when you come in. And so there's not as much zone changes. So I would have to say R10's not, in my opinion, it's not a holding zone because it is a real zone.
Right.
Right, we see a ton of zone changes because that's what everyone defaults to. And should it be something else or not? We know our comprehensive plan basically says the more efficiency of services and, the more the better, right?
Yeah, and I think that if you have a more specific comprehensive plan, you have a little bit more reason, and you also have a lot more predictability and certainty in terms of what the zoning designations will be, and you have recourse against anybody that wants to apply for higher density or lower density or whatever density might not be appropriate, because you already have looked at that in a comprehensive way.
But there's two things I see. I see the benefit of it, but I also am a little bit worried about a possible unintended consequences. So what if things change? Circumstances change. So I'm thinking, this is what I'm thinking, is that back when the city of Portland worked on the Albina community plan, they were thinking of one thing. Well, the climate and the whole composition of the neighborhood flipped. So when they were looking at putting in, so that's why there was so much of this backlash against all of that high density development that was tearing down all the houses. 20 years went by. They should have gone back to take a look at that plan instead of just willy-nilly saying, this is what it says, this is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
They needed to go back and take a look at the snapshot from 20 years ago or 25 years ago was not the same snapshot of 2015. And they never went back and looked at it again and said, well, wait a minute, is this still right?
You just hit the nail on the head. This is what planning commissions are all about, is taking a look at changing circumstances.
Because they certainly change.
And the question is, do we have the means by which to look at every change and anticipate it?
There's a difference between that and just muddling through. Do you agree?
And I learned that in Public Administration 101.
Right.
We muddle through.
Well,
that's how you run a government. You muddle through.
But here's another good example. Is it really, without the master plans that we currently have, is it really appropriate to continue to willy-nilly develop subdivision after subdivision after subdivision south of town? I mean, I don't know. Maybe we need to go back and take a look at that and see if that is really the right picture.
But who's got the answer to that?
Well, we don't have the answer. We have to find the answer.
You have to have information.
Yes, and we don't have it.
And who's going to give you that information?
Well, we need to get money to get information.
See, I understand that's the dilemma that I think about all the time. Are we right? Are we doing the right thing? No, we're doing the immediate thing in front of us.
But see, that's not any good way to plan.
Well, yeah, but you're answering some sort of a demand. The public has to have some place to live.
Well, I agree.
And you're talking about kids that are 25 years old now.
But somebody that's living in a house, if I buy a lot, I want to have some reasonable degree of certainty that a lot is going to be either R10, R8, R6, R3, or 1,000, whatever. But I guess what's bothering me a little bit is that we worked on this South End Master Plan. And are the developments that annex in, are they going to follow that plan, or is it?
We don't have the implementing stuff to go with it. That's the part we still need.
We do for South End.
But some of them, it's like, are we going to allow people to leapfrog over and develop at the very end when we've got all that stuff in the middle that needs to happen first. See, that, to me, that is bad planning.
Well, some of it may not be under our control as planners or city.
Well, it is, because it's in the city.
Well, it is in the city, but here, let me finish the point I'm trying to make, is the developers that are putting up the money to develop whatever it is, a 2, a 5, or a 10, or a 6, they pick and choose what they can buy land for that will allow them, and I know that the developers get hit with the money grabbing and they make money, but they take the risk in finding a spot that can be developed. The south end is pretty much flat compared to Park Place and Holcomb and some of those. It's cheaper to develop
Oh, there's plenty of buildable lands in
the flatlands than it is in the hills.
I need 1,400 homes.
So the city can't really dictate where they're going to build. It's up to the developer and a willing property owner to sell a chunk of ground. And we have to kind of adapt to what type of housing do we want? Do we want the mega mansions that take up 2 acres and 7,000 square feet? That's not it. Yeah, the code's never going to address that totally.
Yeah, we're here to implement a plan that's in the public interest. Now, define the public interest for me.
Well,
How much time
it's
do you have?
bimodal.
How much time do you
It's
have?
bimodal, right?
Yeah.
It's those that live here and it's those that have an investment interest, right? And
And I
those two
think
interests can be diametrically opposing.
the public interest or the planning that we're seeing the start of right now, it hasn't been 100% successful, is what's affordable housing. We can get some houses built, but the definition of affordable housing must have 10 different answers depending on what you're
Who
looking
you're
at.
talking to.
In the public's interest right now, if you listen to the public, they're not very happy with what we've decided. That's not in their interest, the last few.
Well, what about the people we don't hear from?
Well, we can't, you know.
They gave up.
You
They
can,
threw in
you
the towel.
can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, as my father used
A
to
lot of
say.
people I've heard just don't even bother to go to their neighborhood association meeting because they say it doesn't do us any good, the city doesn't listen. And that's what I kept hearing from all these people that were so mad at our planning commission, then they follow at the city commission when the appeal happened. They were just livid. I mean, some of them actually yelled at and swore at the guy who owned the property.
And some of that, you can't explain it away to those neighbors, but their property was developed 15 years ago under a different code, and we have transition codes that, you know, I've said often that if we were still building 10,000 square foot lots or 15,000 square foot lots in the Portland metro area for the last 50 years that I've been around here, we would be living in Salem or south of Salem because of the sprawl, the amount of land it takes up and the amount of roads that it takes up and infrastructure for sewer and water and all that stuff.
Shades of Senate Bill 100.
Yeah, the real.
LCDC.
We'll be living in
That's
Beaverton.
Takeda.
No, I don't think you want to live out there either. The
Okay,
traffic
so-
going out this, so
Those are great, those
Yeah.
are great things in our
Yeah.
list. I think it's a good
So
start.
our
Yeah.
next meeting is scheduled for,
So you get a day off. We're not meeting on Christmas.
we're meeting Christmas Day. There'll be a giant barbecue at Bob's house.
There you go.
Everybody bring a potluck dish.
Killing the fatted cat.
He's bringing the meat. Bob's bringing the meat.
The next
We
date
have the meat.
is January 8th.
Are we going to be told by Dan, or are you going to contact us to tell us
Yeah, will you let us know?
the selection tonight and what's
Yeah,
happening?
a closed loop.
Did you tabulate it now?
No.
Okay,
It
because
won't make a
I'd like to
difference.
know before I leave.
Okay,
Well,
I'll take a
Dan
look
makes the
after
final decision
this.
anyway,
That's neither here nor there.
even though we also know to Bob.
All right, so it sounds like the
So
next
you're
meeting
talking
is on
about
January 8th.
8th, okay.
And we do have a couple items on the agenda, but between now and then, I just want to get clear direction. I'm gonna take this and send it back out to you guys to prioritize.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we're gonna do about the top part of the list, because that's
Good
not.
Lord, that's
Just soak it in about all the work
I'm
that we've
looking
already
at the
committed
I'm
to.
looking at the bottom part of the list.
But the top's good too, I would read it, but, I mean, I think.
We'll read it.
Because you might wanna put something, yeah, you may wanna put things that are already in our work plan
Yeah.
as a goal, like
Right.
to look at
This is
the
gonna be
legacy
kind of- This
side.
is gonna be
Yeah.
kind of a round robin, so
In there.
is it all right with you, as people make their comments, that we send them to you, but we can all see what we've said? Because, Bob is gonna come up with something that I'm gonna say, man, that's absolutely brilliant, I want that on my list.
Is that on the record? Is it?
I know, I was gonna say, Bob.
Do you,
Bob may come up with something that's absolutely brilliant that I want on my list.
how about we do this? I can send all this out, and then you guys can ponder this and add more stuff, and we'll set like a deadline, maybe by, Christmas or something like that. You can send me more stuff to make the list even longer,
Yeah.
and then we'll
No.
send it back out to
Let's
prioritize.
just prioritize it.
Because there is a,
Well,
I think we're pretty set.
yeah, so when we come back on the
Yeah.
8th, I want some time, can we have some time on the agenda that we can talk about what our priorities are?
yeah,
The only issue that I have, speaking from a management point of view now, not a planner,
Yes, Mr. Manager?
is how we communicate our decisions, our recommendations. What format do we use? Consensus, resolution, ordinance, whatever. Now, we're pretty well regulated in terms of the quasi-judicial process and making findings and all that kind of stuff. And there's a process by which that's referred to the city commission. But on other things that concern us, and I know there's a lot of passion here that's going on and a lot of good ideas, but the manner in which that communication is forwarded to the people to make the decision has got a lot to do as to how that is understood.
Do you want a memo or do you want a letter?
Well, see, that's what I think this.
That's what I was planning to do, is
Yeah.
drafting something,
Yeah.
That'd be our goals.
giving it to her, everybody goes back and looks at it, they add their 87 cents,
Right.
that becomes part of the report.
And I think the
And then
chair,
we give it-
is our designated leader, spokesman, and always should be. I don't think it should come from me. I don't think it should come from anybody
Just
else,
as good a
you
spokesman
know?
as I am.
But officially, it would be hand-delivered,
Yeah.
Wells Fargo, Pony Express, I don't care.
I'll
But
just send it by dog sled.
well, dog sled's fine, friendly dog,
I have a dog.
do you? As long as
But
it's
aren't
not
you
offensive.
planning on addressing the city commission at some point with an annual report? Denise?
yes, the planning.
Yes, that's the end result, is that part of this is gonna go into that report of the commission. As I said, we're gonna talk about what we've done, and here's where we're going in the future, and we'd like you to digest this, however we're gonna write it. That's the plan.
You're best off making sure that you get it all sorted out by the 8th, because then there's the city commission meeting on the 17th, which is the second one in January. And that would situate you time-wise to come before them before the retreat.
Okay?
But, I mean, I'm just recognizing
No,
that
that's
it's gonna
fine.
scrunch a little bit in the time frame. And then again, my last push of like,
One page, absolutely.
if you want to add other stuff that is already in the work plan, like legacy project, or, I mean, there are some planning related things that might.
Okay, so everybody got that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go forth and
Is this gonna be, is
So,
this,
so can I just clarify one thing? So I'm going to take this and then resend it out. We'll prioritize it, and then as I get comments, I will spread them out to the group. We're not going to email each other because we don't want to do that. We want to keep everything in this open and transparent way. And then you will take all of that and make a memo and have it for the 8th. Does that
No,
sound?
On the 8th, I want to have one further discussion about what the priorities are.
Okay, and then they'll authorize you to do the memo and stuff.
Right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm very crystal clear now.
I may be not, but that's all right. It's perfectly clear, as somebody used to say.
So there's no other meeting scheduled for tonight? I can go home and without a...
Except for the one at your house on
Okay.
Christmas.
Yeah, that's the nightcap?
Yeah, the nightcap. That's
So, before we close, I just want to have two things. One, again, our meeting is canceled on Christmas, so have a good holiday. And then also, thank you again for your service in 2017. I think that it was a tough year to be here because we had a large volume of items and we had complicated items and legal items and technical items and staff reports that I hope could be shorter, but they couldn't. And so I appreciate the time that you guys took to come to all the Planning Commission meetings. We had a couple of work sessions in 2017.
we will have more.
And that was good. We'll continue to have more. I did
So
want
don't let anything else get put on the agenda for the 8th.
There is
Too
some
late
stuff
now.
on the agenda.
But I mean, not like 5 hearings or 4 hearings, because again, I want that time for us to.
It's too late to notice for that, so
Okay,
yeah, you're good.
perfect, okay.
And then the other thing is that the city commission, I had talked to you guys about a warning that the city commission was looking at a policy for all boards and committees within the city about how late they go and the kind of minutes that get approved. That did get approved, so that means.
And why, again, did they not have a discussion with us about that? I do not like being told something like that without providing any input. To me, that's just exactly what you're going towards.
Yeah, so as it relates to planning commission.
That came from us.
We already set our own rules on what we said we were going to do.
Yeah, but they just used ours
Does this
as a carbon
supersede
copy.
that? What we already decided for ourselves?
They did know, I did inform them that we have the exact same timelines that they had imposed for all the boards and committees, which
They just
was
made it a law.
you can go till 10 o'clock, and at 10 o'clock you have to have it. So I may pipe up at like 10:01 or something, but you'll have to have a unanimous decision to go later than 10 o'clock, and the maximum time you can go towards is 11, and that's it.
Was it 11? I thought it was 10:30. It's 11?
It ended up being 11.
Ours was 10:30.
Ours, I thought, was 11 as well, actually.
It was 10:30.
Spending time with you guys till midnight.
But, and then the other component of that is the minutes are going to be more action-oriented minutes, so they'll be
I don't like
shorter.
the way the city commission does their minutes. It does not, they don't say anything.
They'll be more succinct now, and then, but the videos are still there.
I'm sorry.
And that may mean for us that we get a quicker turnaround on minutes, because there's a prioritization to get minutes done, and that's why we're bogged down and behind, but.
I don't like the way my wife gives me directions, so I'm going to start taking minutes.
Text.
That, I want to see.
Text.
That's all I have.
I want to
Then
see
Then I've
that.
got it right there on the screen.
Oh,
I
is
wanna
she
s-
speaking?
Yeah.
I want to
You're
see
good.
that.
Yeah, we text.
What's that?
I want to see that.
Do you?
Yeah.
I talk a lot.
I'm serious.
Are we adjourned?
It clears everything up.
Oh, yes.
You know what Elaine will say about that, Bob? I can tell you what